Chapter 742. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhijing frowned. Yuan Weiqing, this won't do. We've paid such a high price, but you don't cultivate seriously. How can this be? Speaking up to here, Xue Zhijing paused for a moment before continuing. Yuan Weiqing, you listen to me. It's better to cultivate in the secret room. This way, you'll be able to practice martial arts faster. Is there anything wrong with this? After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head with a wry smile. He gestured with his hand and slowly said, Hall Master Xue, a 1-meter wide secret room is only this big. Think about it, if I stay in this space for 70 or 80 years, I'm afraid I'll go crazy. Xue Zhijing shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how is this possible? Don't forget that the one-armed Saber King cultivated his peerless martial arts in this environment. If it's like what you said, then I'm afraid he'll go crazy before he even comes out. Yuan Weiqing sighed. Hall Master Xue, one-armed Saber King was forced to do so. He didn't want to stay in the mountain for so long. If there wasn't a mistake in the plan, then he certainly wouldn't be willing to stay in this space for so many years. Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at Xue Zhijing, and said with a wry smile, Hall Master Xue, one-armed Saber King was forced to do so. His plan wasn't like this. Now that I have a choice, I certainly don't want to choose the path of one-armed Saber King. I hope Hall Master Xue can understand me and don't force me. So that's how it is. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhijing nodded and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, I understand. So one-armed Saber King was forced to do so. It doesn't matter, I understand. After we go back, you'll also be forced to enter the secret room. Yuan Weiqing, you can rest assured that I'll take care of this matter. I'll definitely make you satisfied. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was so scared that he took a step back. He stared at Xue Zhijing and asked with a trembling voice, Hall Master Xue, what do you mean? What do you want to do? Seeing that Yuan Weiqing was scared, Xue Zhijing hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to be nervous. I won't let you know about this. Maybe when you're sleeping, maybe when you're unconscious. In short, I won't let you worry. I'll definitely let you walk into the secret room unknowingly. Then, I will be forced to practice martial arts in the secret chamber. What do you think? No. Yuan Weiqing was so scared by Xue Zhijing's words that he waved his hands repeatedly. Head Xue, you can't do that. You can't do that. How could you do that? I've said that I won't go to the back room. I'll stay at home and cultivate. I definitely won't go to that 1-meter wide space. Xue Zhijing waved his hand with a smile. Yuan Weiqing, don't be nervous. Don't think about it. After we go back, I'll have people start to build the secret room. When it's almost finished, I'll come to find you. You won't find me. Maybe you'll be in the secret room when you open your eyes one day. Speaking of this, Xue Zhijing paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, when you go back, eat whatever you want to eat. If you have any fun, do it quickly because you won't have time to do it once you're in the secret room. Yuan Weiqing, enjoy yourself. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and said, Head Xue, I've said that I will never go to the secret room. I won't stay at home and cultivate. Head Xue, you can rest assured that my cultivation speed will definitely not let you down. Xue Zhijing shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, if you don't go to the secret room to cultivate, then wouldn't the secret room that I built be wasted? After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing's heart suddenly moved. He quickly turned around and pointed at LV Hushan. He said with a smile, Head Xue, it doesn't matter. Even if I don't go to the secret room, LV Hushan can go instead of me. His martial arts are not high. It will be good for him to cultivate in the secret room for a while. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly became angry and shouted, Yuan Weiqing, what do you mean? If you don't want to go to the secret room to cultivate, why do you want me to go to the secret room to cultivate? You better explain it to me today. Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. He forced a smile and said, LV Hushan, don't you also want to cultivate? What's wrong with going to the secret room to cultivate? It can improve the speed of cultivation. I think you should be very clear about this, right? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, if the secret room is so good, why don't you go to your place to cultivate? Instead, you stay at home to cultivate? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. He then waved his hand and said with a smile, LV Hushan, how can you compare with me? Don't forget, I have a son. If I don't see him, I will miss him. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, you have a son. I admit that. I also admit that I don't have a son. But I have an old mother. Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, he snorted coldly and continued. Yuan Weiqing, my old mother is already so old. I also want to spend more time with her. If I go to the secret room, how can I accompany my old mother? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, what you said is wrong. Even if you go to the secret room to cultivate, you can still see your old mother. Have you forgotten that Hall Master Shui has left a vent in the secret room? You can look at your old mother from a distance through the vent. Isn't that good? Hearing this, LV Hushan became a bit annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, if that's the case, why don't you watch your son in the ventilation hole? Why do you want me to watch my old mother in the ventilation hole? Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, how can it be the same? Comparing an old mother and a son, which one do you think is more important? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, needless to say, of course it's the old mother. You can have as many sons as you want, but there is only one old mother. Do you understand? Who do you think is more important? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing blinked and was speechless for a while. LV Hushan was right. There was only one mother, but there could be several sons. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing was silent, LV Hushan sneered and said, Yuan Weiqing, you don't think that your son is more important than your old mother, do you? Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused, and then he continued, if you think so, then pretend that I didn't say anything. Hearing LV Hushan's question again, Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, whether it is an old mother or a son, they are both very important. No matter who is superior, they are all very important. Hearing this, LV Hushan immediately glared and said with some annoyance, Yuan Weiqing, I have already told you that you can have several sons, but you can only have one mother. Why don't you understand? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, I don't care whether you can understand or not. In short, I tell you, in my heart, my old mother is more important than my son, so I have to accompany her. I can't go to the secret room to practice. If you want to go, you should go by yourself. You can also see your son in the ventilation hole. Is there anything wrong with that? Don't you think so? No. As soon as LV Hushan's voice fell, Yuan Weiqing said loudly, LV Hushan, this is absolutely not possible. In addition to my son, I have a wife. If my wife can't see me, she will definitely miss me. So, for my wife and son, I must not go to the secret room to practice. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I hope you don't miss it. You have to know how much Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang have sacrificed in order for you to succeed. Don't you know? Therefore, I think that you should listen to Hall Master Shui's words and obediently go to the secret room to cultivate. If you can master your martial arts as soon as possible, then you will be worthy of their efforts. Don't you understand? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. He subconsciously turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and said in a trembling voice, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, can I not go to the secret room to practice?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, Zhang Chunren didn't even think about it. He immediately nodded and said with a smile, "Of course you can. No one is forcing you to go to the secret room to practice unless you are willing to go." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was slightly relieved. He turned to look at Xue Zhijing and asked in a trembling voice, "Hall Master Xue, did you hear that? Vice Hall Master Zhang said that I can't go to the secret room to cultivate. He said that I can only cultivate in the secret room if I want to." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhijing did not get angry. He turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and said with a smile, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you mean to say that Yuan Weiqing doesn't need to go to the secret room to cultivate and can still practice the peerless martial arts?" Hearing Xue Zhijing's question, Zhang Chunren nodded, "Hall Master Xue, if Yuan Weiqing takes the medicine that can increase his martial arts talent, then there is naturally no need to go to the secret room to practice. Don't you think so?" After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing nodded, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, since you said that there is no need to go to the secret room to practice peerless martial arts, then I will listen to you and save myself the trouble of building a secret room." After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was immediately overjoyed. He hurriedly cupped his hands towards Xue Zhijing. "Hall Master Xue, don't worry. Even if I practice at home, I will definitely practice well. Don't worry, I will definitely not disappoint you." Xue Zhijing sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, I believe that you will not disappoint us. The reason why I want to build a secret room is so that you can practice peerless martial arts faster. Since you are confident that you can practice peerless martial arts without using a secret room, then I will not force you." At this point, Xue Zhijing paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to reply, he continued to speak. "In that case, we are now left with the most important problem. How do we catch Yi Tianhua, don't you think so?" After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, everyone was stunned for a moment. Only then did they remember that the most important problem had not been solved. All of these problems were built on the basis of capturing Yi Tianhua. Only then could they be implemented. Whether it was 10 million gold coins, peerless martial arts, or the miraculous medicine that could change talent, they all needed Yi Tianhua to solve. Seeing that everyone was silent, Xue Zhijing smiled and said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, in that case, let's follow the plan just now. What do you think?" After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment. "Hall Master Xue, what was our plan just now?" Xue Zhijing smiled. "How do we catch Yi Tianhua? Now, tell me, what should our formation be?" After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren pondered for a moment before slowly saying, "Then let's follow the plan just now. Hall Master Xue and I will stay at the back and attack Yi Tianhua with thunderbolt pills. Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan will stay at the front and block Yi Tianhua's attack." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing were stunned at the same time. But then, LV Hushan said loudly, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, this won't do. If I stay at the front, it will be too dangerous. I think we should change our formation." At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Zhang Chunren to reply, he continued to speak. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, Yi Tianhua feels guilty for what he did to you. He definitely won't hurt you. I think it's better for you to stay at the front. This is the best choice." After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren couldn't help but frown. "LV Hushan, why are you still saying that? Don't you know that I'll be more useful if I stay at the back?" LV Hushan shook his head. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, but it's too dangerous for me to stay at the front. Maybe Yi Tianhua will kill me first." At that time, won't I be unable to block his attacks? Zhang Chunren shook his head. LV Hushan, that's impossible. Tianhua doesn't want to cause a fight between the two gangs, so he definitely won't hurt you. So you just have to stay at the front. There won't be any problems. LV Hushan sighed. Vice Hall Master Zhang, but if there's a problem, won't I be in trouble? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren was a little annoyed. LV Hushan, why are you so timid? I really don't know what's the use of your martial arts. I've already told you that even if you stay at the front, you won't be in danger. Why don't you believe me? LV Hushan shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, it's not that I don't believe you, but my martial arts are too weak. Even if Tianhua doesn't attack me with all his strength, I won't be able to block it. At that time, it's a small matter if they kill me, but it's a big matter if Tianhua breaks through our defensive line. Chapter 743. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren frowned. LV Hushan, don't worry. As long as you block the front, even if Tianhua breaks through your line of defense, we won't blame you. LV Hushan shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, although you don't blame me, I blame myself. Everyone has worked so hard, but because of me, the plan failed. I'm not willing to accept this. Vice Hall Master Zhang, in order to not let our plan fail, I think it's better for me to stay at the back. Don't worry, although my martial arts are not as good as yours, my method of throwing hidden weapons will definitely not disappoint you. Zhang Chunren shook his head. LV Hushan, you talk too much. Look, from the beginning to the end, Yuan Weiqing didn't complain at all. He went wherever he was told to go. You should learn from him about this. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan immediately turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a bitter smile, Yuan Weiqing, you really don't have any complaints? Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment and then shook his head. No. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan suddenly sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, now that things have come to this, I don't want to lie to you anymore. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, do you think that Tianhua won't hit you hard? Let me tell you, you're wrong. When you spoke to Tianhua like that just now, I think he probably already hates you. He just doesn't have the chance. If he had the chance, I believe he would definitely not let you go. Yuan Weiqing, do you believe me? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was shocked and asked in a trembling voice, LV Hushan, that's impossible. Tianhua has already beaten me to a pulp. Could he still hit me hard? LV Hushan smiled bitterly and nodded. Yuan Weiqing, don't forget why you were beaten to a pulp by Tianhua. LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. Instead, he snorted coldly and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, not only did you fail to ambush Tianhua, you were even crippled by him. Do you really think that Tianhua would feel guilty towards you? Impossible. Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you, as long as you stand in front of him, Tianhua will definitely attack you first, and you will definitely be killed by Tianhua. Do you understand? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. He suddenly turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and asked in a trembling voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, what LV Hushan said makes sense. If I stand in front of him, Tianhua might really attack me. At that time, my arm will be injured. Wouldn't it be very dangerous? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and turned to look at LV Hushan. He sneered and said, LV Hushan, don't talk nonsense. Why would Tianhua attack Yuan Weiqing so heavily? Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer him. He turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and continued. Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to be afraid. Tianhua isn't that kind of person. We've been here for so long. Have you seen Yi Tianhua take the initiative to attack? No. Yi Tianhua doesn't want to cause a fight between the two gangs, so he definitely won't attack too heavily. Why don't you understand? After hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. But I did attack Yi Tianhua first. That's why he injured me. Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, although you attacked him first, didn't we already make it clear that this has nothing to do with you? This is just a misunderstanding. So you don't have to worry. What LV Hushan said won't happen. Yuan Weiqing lowered his head and thought for a moment, then asked tentatively, Vice Hall Master Zhang, can I stay at the back? I'm afraid that if I stay at the front, Yi Tianhua will really attack me. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and turned to look at Xue Zhizheng. He smiled bitterly and said, Hall Master Xue, they all want to stay at the back. What do you think? Should we let them stay at the back? Xue Zhizheng shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can we do that? If they all stay at the back, who will block the front? If no one blocks Yi Tianhua, how can we attack him? At this point, Xue Zhizheng paused for a moment before continuing. It's precisely because there needs to be someone blocking in front that I told the three of you to block in front at the beginning. However, you guys kept changing your positions and I didn't know what you guys wanted to do. Do the three of you have to solve this problem? Xue Zhizheng turned to look at LV Hushan and said with a smile, LV Hushan, if you have anything to say, just tell Vice Hall Master Zhang. As long as he can solve it, he will definitely solve it for you. Don't worry. After Xue Zhizheng finished speaking to LV Hushan, he turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, do you want to stay at the front to block Yi Tianhua? You guys can discuss it. I won't participate. If you have anything to say, just tell it to Vice Hall Master Zhang. After seeing Yuan Weiqing nod, Xue Zhizheng turned to look at Zhang Chunren. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this matter has been settled. The three of you can discuss it. As for who will stay at the front, you three can decide for yourselves. Xue Zhizheng paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to reply and continued speaking. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this matter has to be done quickly because it takes too long. I'm afraid that Yi Tianhua won't be able to wait and might run away first. After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, Zhang Chunren couldn't help but frown and ask in a low voice, Hall Master Xue, how can you not care? You are our Hall Master, how can you not care? Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, Xue Zhizheng sighed and said slowly, Vice Hall Master Zhang, Yi Tianhua's martial arts are very strong. No matter who stays at the front, it will be very dangerous. I really can't bear to say it. You guys should decide for yourselves who should stay at the front. After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, LV Hushan frowned and hurriedly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, my martial arts are weak. It's really not suitable for me to stay at the front. Let me stay at the back. What do you think? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing also hurriedly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, Yi Tianhua's martial arts are very strong. I also have the experience of sneak attacking him. He will definitely hold a grudge against me. Once he meets me, he will definitely hit me hard. So, let me stay at the back. After hearing the two's words, Zhang Chunren's heart was angry. He sneered and said, If both of you stay at the back, who will stay at the front? After Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan heard this, they subconsciously looked at Zhang Chunren, but didn't say anything. However, the meaning of the two was obvious. They wanted Zhang Chunren to stand in front of them. Looking at the two's gaze, Zhang Chunren was a little annoyed. LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, let me ask you, are your martial arts better than mine? LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing hurriedly shook their heads. No, how can our martial arts be better than yours? Zhang Chunren nodded. Since your martial arts are not as good as mine, why don't you let me stay at the back to play a bigger role? Instead, you guys who can't use your martial arts to stay at the back. What's the use of that? Don't tell me that you can catch Yi Tianhua with your low skills? After hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said loudly, Vice Hall Master Zhang, although our martial arts are not high, don't forget that Hall Master Shui is still at the back. I believe that with his martial arts, he will definitely be able to catch Yi Tianhua as soon as possible. Hearing the two's words, Zhang Chunren sneered. I naturally believe in Hall Master Shui's ability, but I really can't think of the use of you staying at the back. I hope you can give me an explanation. What is the use of you staying at the back? After the two heard Zhang Chuanren's words, they couldn't help but be stunned. After a while, LV Hushan said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, although our martial arts are not high, after all, we still know some martial arts. Although it is not very useful, it is still useful at critical times. Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Zhang Chunren and the others to answer him. Vice Hall Master Zhang, with our martial arts, if we stayed at the front, we would definitely be killed by Yi Tianhua. If we were killed so easily by him and couldn't even block his attacks, then what's the point of us staying at the front? We might as well stay at the back and preserve our strength. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing also hurriedly nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, LV Hushan is right. It is useless for us to block the front. Staying at the back can ensure our strength. In this case, I don't think I should be at the front. Let me stay at the back. This is the safest way. After hearing the two's words, Zhang Chunren frowned. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, do you two mean that you want me to block the front alone? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan were taken aback at the same time, but then the two nodded at the same time. Seeing the two nodding, Zhang Chunren suddenly sneered. Well, let me, the useful one, block the front. You useless guys run to the back and hide. Very good, I am very satisfied with what you have done. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan to answer his words, he snorted coldly and continued. Yuan Weiqing, don't forget why we're doing this. Isn't it to get Yi Tianhua to agree to our conditions and fulfill your wish? But what about you? Is this how you repay us? Hearing these words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment, then he said with a bitter smile, Vice Hall Master Zhang, it is precisely because of this reason that I have to protect myself well. Otherwise, if I am killed by Yi Tianhua, how can I fulfill this wish? How can I become the second one-armed saber king of the South region? Vice Hall Master Zhang, this time, let me stay at the back. Consider it as giving me a chance. I will never forget you. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded. Yuan Weiqing, if you want a chance, then I will give you this chance. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at Shui Zhijing and sneered. Hall Master Shui, I have already thought about it. Yuan Weiqing's will is not strong enough. If he wants to practice the upper-level martial arts, I am afraid that he must need a secret room. Hall Master Shui, how can we let you pay for the construction of the secret room alone? Both of us will pay for it. We must build a very sturdy building, so sturdy that even the one-armed saber king won't be able to break it. Hall Master Shui, what do you think? After hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Shui Zhijing nodded and said with a smile, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I suddenly don't want to build a secret room because I need some money for some things, so I don't have any gold coins to build a secret room. If you want, you can build it yourself. I can help you. After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren was so angry that he almost flew into a rage. He sneered and said, Hall Master Shui, it doesn't matter. Since you don't have any gold coins, then I will pay for it. This is nothing. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren suddenly turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and sneered. Yuan Weiqing, your temper is too unstable, so I have decided to build a secret room for you to practice martial arts. What do you think? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was suddenly shocked. He asked with a trembling voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, Didn't we just agree that I can stay at home and practice? Why do you want to build a secret room now? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren sighed. Yuan Weiqing, I thought that since we are all martial artists, your willpower should be very strong. But from what happened just now, it seems that your willpower is not strong enough. You also know that in order for you to succeed in becoming the second one-armed Saber King, we will have to pay a huge price. 10 million gold coins, this is an amount that many people don't even dare to think about. Brilliant martial arts, these are things that many people in the martial arts world dream of, but can't get. There are also medicinal herbs that can increase one's martial arts talent. These are the most precious treasures in the world. Ordinary people have never even heard of them. Yuan Weiqing, these three precious things, if they are given to you, with your weak will, in case you don't succeed, then all our efforts will be in vain. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words and continued speaking. Yuan Weiqing, in order to distract your mind from practicing martial arts, so that you can truly practice the upper-level martial arts, we can only use the method that Hall Master Xue just said, which is to build a secret room. This secret room is very secure. The most important thing is that the secret room has no door. If you want to come out, you can only rely on yourself to open it. But let me tell you, if you don't have the martial arts of the one-armed Saber King, wanting to come out is simply an impossible matter. Chapter 744. Zhang Chunren said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, if there is such a secret room, I believe it will be of great help to your martial arts practice. Don't you think so? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing's forehead suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He waved his hands anxiously and said in a trembling voice, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, it's really not necessary. I have a strong will. I'll be fine as long as I practice at home. Please don't build a secret room for me. It's a waste of money and useless. Zhang Chunren didn't wait for him to finish his words and waved his hand to interrupt him. Yuan Weiqing, it's settled. In order to ensure your safety, you can stay behind. Is that okay? Hearing that he could stay behind, Yuan Weiqing was really surprised and happy. He was happy that he didn't have to face Yi Tianhua's attack. He was afraid that he would have to enter the secret room to practice martial arts after going back. At the thought of the horror of the backroom, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but shudder as he said in a quivering voice, Deputy Hall Chief Zhang, I think we'd better forget about the backroom. It's useless. I'll just cultivate at home. Zhang Chunren shook his head and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to worry, and you don't have to be afraid, because when we go back, I will put you in the secret chamber without you noticing. When you wake up, it will be dark all around, and only a small ventilation hole will have a trace of light. At that time, I believe that you will have nothing else to do except practice martial arts. You practice martial arts every day. I think your martial arts progress will be very fast. Maybe in 40 to 50 years, you will be able to successfully cultivate your martial art. At that time, you will be able to rely on your own profound martial arts to break out of the secret room that is trapping you. After you leave the secret room, you will become the second one-armed Saber King in South County. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing was scared out of his wits. He said in a trembling voice, Deputy Hall Chief Zhang, you know that I'm very hygienic. I have to take a bath almost every day. If I don't take a bath in the backroom for a long time, I might go crazy. Therefore, I think we'd better not waste money on building a backroom. What do you think? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and looked at the sky in the distance. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to worry about this. There's no problem at all. Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing's reply and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, think about it. That small vent is facing the outside. As long as it rains outside, water will naturally flow into the secret room through the vent. By then, won't you be able to fulfill your wish? Hearing these words, LV Hushan on the side couldn't help but laugh out loud. However, he quickly reacted and hurriedly reached out to cover his mouth. He looked at Zhang Chunren carefully. Zhang Chunren glared at LV Hushan fiercely. LV Hushan, what are you laughing at? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was shocked and hurriedly waved his hand. Deputy Hall Chief Zhang, I'm not laughing. My throat was itchy just now. I wasn't laughing. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren nodded and said with a sneer, LV Hushan, you don't have to laugh. Is it because you're also in the back room I built? What? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was taken aback. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, Deputy Hall Chief Zhang, forget it. If you want me to cultivate, I'll cultivate at home. I can't cultivate in the back room. I'm afraid I won't be able to bear it and will go crazy from the boredom. Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, how would you know if you haven't done it? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. Maybe after you stay in the back room for a while, you'll gradually like this kind of environment. This is because this kind of environment is really effective for cultivating martial arts. Most of the people who can cultivate high-level martial arts use this method. It's like every sect has people who go into closed-door training. Their so-called closed-door training actually means this. They lock themselves in an empty room and begin to cultivate. Some people even only eat once every 7 days and drink once every 7 days. The rest of the time, they are constantly cultivating martial arts. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, I'm already very relaxed with you. At least I'll let you eat a meal every day. I won't let you eat only one meal every 7 days. Isn't this better than those who go into closed-door training? At this moment, Yuan Weiqing was already sweating profusely. When he heard Zhang Chunren's question, he didn't know what to say for a moment. LV Hushan suddenly said, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, as you said just now, leave a small ventilation hole. When it rains, there will be water. However, if the rain doesn't stop, then the water won't stop flowing. At that time, what if the back room is flooded? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment. After a while, he waved his hand, LV Hushan, you're right. If you didn't mention it, I really would have forgotten about this. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. Since you're afraid that the back room will be flooded, then it doesn't matter. We can put a ventilation pipe in the ventilation hole. If the back room is flooded, you can use this ventilation pipe to breathe. You should be able to get through this difficulty. I believe that no matter how heavy the rain is, it will pass in a day or two. You just need to persist in the back room for a day or two, and there should be no problem. This is not a big deal. You can rest assured. Hearing this, LV Hushan gritted his teeth. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, if the ventilation pipe is broken, what should we do? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was also taken aback. He hurriedly asked, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, LV Hushan is right. If the ventilation pipe is broken, then won't we be in danger? At that time, how can we breathe? Hearing the two's question, Zhang Chunren waved his hand and said with a smile, You can rest assured about this. I can ask him to put the ventilation pipe directly in the back room. At that time, you can check it yourself. If you find that the ventilation pipe is broken, you can immediately tell him when someone brings you food. Won't that solve the problem? Hearing Zhang Chunren's answer, LV Hushan asked in a trembling voice, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, what if it starts to rain before they bring us food? Won't we be in danger then? Zhang Chunren smiled and waved his hand. LV Hushan, your worries are superfluous. Think about it. How much rain will it take to fill up such a huge backroom? You don't have to worry. Before the backroom is flooded, someone will definitely prepare food for you. At that time, you can tell them that the ventilation pipe is broken. Won't this problem be solved? What's there to worry about? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's answer, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sighed. LV Hushan, I'm not worried about the ventilation pipe being broken. What I'm worried about is that the ventilation pipe is broken when it's raining heavily. At this time, there is no one outside. What should we do then? Thinking about being in a small secret room filled with water, and the two of them staying in this kind of secret room filled with water, they felt abnormally terrified. There was a kind of oppressive feeling which made them feel so uncomfortable that they just wanted to scream out loud. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan clenched his teeth. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, this won't do. If we enter the backroom and such a situation really happens, then we're finished. So I've decided that I won't enter the backroom. If you want me to practice martial arts, unless you let me practice at home, I won't practice it. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren didn't take it seriously. He just smiled faintly. LV Hushan, have you really decided? LV Hushan nodded and answered affirmatively. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, I've decided that I won't practice this kind of martial arts. Can simply drive people crazy. I don't want to become a madman, so I won't practice it. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren nodded and then sighed. LV Hushan, do you know how high one-armed Saber King's martial arts are? Hearing this, LV Hushan frowned. I don't know how high it is. I only know that one-armed Saber King's martial arts are really high. Hearing this, Zhang Chunren suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, one-armed Saber King's martial arts are definitely in the top 3 in the South County, if not the best. So you should know how high one-armed Saber King's martial arts are, right? Hearing this, LV Hushan was suddenly shocked and asked in a trembling voice, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, is it true? Is one-armed Saber King's martial arts really so high? Zhang Chunren nodded and said with a smile, LV Hushan, why would I lie to you? If you don't believe me, you can ask Hall Master Shui. He will definitely answer you. Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, LV Hushan hurriedly turned his head and looked at Shui Zhijing with an inquiring gaze. He asked in a trembling voice, Hall Master Shui, is one-armed Saber King's martial arts really so high that he can be ranked in the top 3 in the South County? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Shui Zhijing nodded. LV Hushan, this is not a lie. One-armed Saber King's martial arts are indeed very high. After he cultivated in the secret room, his martial arts are almost higher than the godly Saber Sect's master. Hearing Shui Zhijing's answer, Zhang Chunren nodded with satisfaction. He turned his head to look at LV Hushan and said with a smile, LV Hushan, did you hear that? One-armed Saber King's martial arts are very high. The reason why he has such high martial arts is because he cultivated in the secret room. If he cultivated at home, I can tell you for sure that he would never have such high martial arts. What's more, he was already crippled at that time. It was fortunate that he could recover his martial arts. If he did not cultivate in the secret room, how could he cultivate such high martial arts? Speaking of this, Zhang Chuanren's tone paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, one-armed Saber King cultivated in the secret room for dozens of years. When he came out, he was almost invincible. Do you think it was worth it for him to cultivate for so many years? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's question, LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Worth it, absolutely worth it. To be able to reach the invincible state, even if he cultivated for 100 years, it was still worth it. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren nodded with satisfaction. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, you heard it too. If you become the second one-armed saber king, it is equivalent to being almost invincible in the South County. At that time, you will be a big figure respected by tens of thousands of people. So, I hope you will be strict with yourself and strive to reach that state. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunren mention one-armed saber king, Yuan Weiqing's heart suddenly surged with a warm current, making him forget the horror of the secret room. He only thought that after cultivating, he would be invincible. Vice Hall Master Zhang, you can rest assured that I will cultivate well and will not disappoint your expectations. Zhang Chunren nodded. Yuan Weiqing, although the conditions in the secret room are difficult, it will be of great help to you. Without the secret room, it will be difficult for you to succeed. However, with the secret room, your cultivation speed will be accelerated and naturally you will be able to succeed easily. Yuan Weiqing hurriedly nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I will remember. I will cultivate well in the secret room. I will not dare to slack off. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. Thinking of what Zhang Chunren had said about one-armed saber king, he felt a little regretful. Although the conditions in the secret room were difficult, once he succeeded, the benefits he would obtain were quite huge. Thinking that he would become the top existence in the South County in the future, LV Hushan was a little excited. Zhang Chunren looked at the excited LV Hushan and said with a smile, LV Hushan, it's a pity that you took the initiative to ask not to cultivate. It's really a pity. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question. However, it's also good that you don't cultivate. We can also save a lot of resources and don't have to worry about those resources. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan remembered that Zhang Chunren had asked Yuan Weiqing to stay behind. He could not help but feel more regretful and said hurriedly, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I regret it now. Can you let me cultivate too? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment and asked with some doubts, LV Hushan, didn't you just say that you don't need to cultivate? Why do you regret it now? LV Hushan scratched his head embarrassedly. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I didn't think it through just now. Now I have thought it through. I also want to cultivate martial arts and reach the state of one-armed saber king. I hope Vice Hall Master Zhang can help me and let me cultivate too. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and thought for a moment. Then he slowly said, LV Hushan, I can let you cultivate, but you have to promise me. Chapter 745. Zhang Chunren said slowly, LV Hushan, you have to promise me that when the battle starts, you have to stand in front. Do you understand? Hearing this, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. He subconsciously turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing, then turned back to look at Zhang Chunren and asked doubtfully, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, why can Yuan Weiqing stay behind, but I have to stand in front? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing, then slowly said, LV Hushan, this is because Yuan Weiqing's arm is already injured. The reason why we are willing to support him and pay such a high price for him to practice martial arts is because he has done so much for us, so we are willing to help him. Now, Yuan Weiqing's fighting strength has been reduced by more than half. Even if he stands in front, I'm afraid it won't be of much use. So, let him hide behind and throw thunderbolt balls at Tianhua. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, let me stay behind. If I stand in front, if Tianhua kills me, how can I practice martial arts? Hearing this, Zhang Chunren suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, you haven't made any contributions yet, and you want us to pay such a high price to help you practice martial arts. Do you think we will agree? Hearing this, LV Hushan was suddenly stunned. Only then did he remember that the reason Yuan Weiqing was injured was because he sneak-attacked Yi Tianhua. Speaking of which, this could be considered as a contribution to everyone. Thinking of this, LV Hushan hurriedly pointed at An Hongda and the others in the distance and hurriedly said, "Deputy Hall Master Zhang, I also made a move just now. Without my help, how could we catch them so easily? Deputy Hall Master Zhang, you should have seen it too, right?" Zhang Chunren shook his head. "LV Hushan, are you injured?" Hearing this, LV Hushan hurriedly turned around. "Deputy Hall Master Zhang, look, my back is injured. It still hurts now." Zhang Chunren glanced at it casually and said slowly, "LV Hushan, these are just some minor injuries. It doesn't matter. As long as you rest for a while, you will naturally recover." Hearing this, LV Hushan hurriedly turned to look at Zhang Chunren and asked, "Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, since I'm also injured, can I hide behind you?" Zhang Chunren shook his head. "LV Hushan, your injuries are so light. There's no reason for you to hide behind." Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer him. He snorted coldly and continued to speak. "LV Hushan, the reason why we're helping Yuan Weiqing is because he's already been crippled by Yi Tianhua. If we don't help him, he'll probably spend the rest of his life crippled. He was crippled because of us, so we have to help him. LV Hushan, if you were also crippled now, then I would definitely let you hide in the back without saying anything, because you have also contributed to us before. But not now. You're only slightly injured and it won't affect anything. So, if you want to get a chance to cultivate, you must perform well. Blocking in front is the best opportunity for you to perform. If you perform well and block Yi Tianhua's attack, I can guarantee you that after this matter is over, I will definitely let you enter the secret room and enjoy the same treatment as Yuan Weiqing. What do you think?" After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan frowned. "Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, but if I'm killed by Yi Tianhua, wouldn't it be a waste?" Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. "LV Hushan, you didn't put in any effort, so how can you get anything?" Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he snorted and continued. "LV Hushan, to tell you the truth, with such a good opportunity, if I say so, I believe that countless people will be willing to come here and block in front of me. LV Hushan, do you believe me?" Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. After he reacted, he sighed in his heart. No matter what, he had to admit that Zhang Chunren was right. If he spread the news, as long as someone was willing to block in front of him, they could help him cultivate peerless martial arts. LV Hushan believed that there would be many people who would come here to sign up. In South County City, there were many people who were not afraid of hardships and tiredness. Even so, they did not have the chance to cultivate high-level martial arts. Now that they had the chance, LV Hushan believed that they would not let go of this opportunity to change their fate. Although LV Hushan did not answer, Zhang Chunren could tell what LV Hushan was thinking just by looking at his expression. Zhang Chunren sneered and said, "LV Hushan, if you don't believe me, we can try. Also, if you don't want to block in front of me, that's fine. However, I hope you won't regret it. When you regret it, even if you beg me, it's useless. Do you understand?" Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I'm willing." At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment before continuing, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, are you only going to let me block in front of you?" Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at LV Hushan and nodded. "LV Hushan, if you agree, after this battle is over, I will build a secret room for you so that you can cultivate peerless martial arts." At this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for LV Hushan to answer him. He snorted coldly and continued speaking. "LV Hushan, it's useless to say anything else. I just want to see your performance. As long as you can block Etianhua, I can make the decision for you to cultivate martial arts. But if you want to hide in the back, that's fine. However, I have to tell you that even if you kneel down and beg me in the future, I won't agree. Do you understand? Hearing this, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I'm willing to block in front of you. However, I'm afraid that I can't block him alone. It doesn't matter if I'm killed by Etianhua, but if I delay your matter, wouldn't that be terrible? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment before continuing. Vice Hall Master Zhang, why don't you let Yuan Weiqing help me? The two of us will block in front of him. I believe that with our martial arts, Etianhua will definitely not be able to break through our defense line. Vice Hall Master Zhang, what do you think? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and sneered. LV Hushan, I think you alone are enough. Yuan Weiqing is now seriously injured and his combat power has decreased by more than half. Even if he goes forward to help, I'm afraid that he won't be of much help. It's better for him to stay behind and help us. That's the right thing to do. LV Hushan hurriedly shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, that won't happen. Yuan Weiqing will definitely be able to help me. At this point, LV Hushan paused and rolled his eyes before continuing. Vice Hall Master Zhang, think about it. When Etianhua attacks us later, his first target will definitely be me. Because Etianhua feels guilty towards Yuan Weiqing, his first target will definitely not be Yuan Weiqing. Since Etianhua's first target is me, Yuan Weiqing naturally won't be in any danger. He only needs to support me from the side and not let Etianhua attack me with all his strength. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if I'm killed by Etianhua, it won't be good for anyone. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing must help me with all his strength. Only by doing so can we all be safe. Don't you think so? As soon as LV Hushan finished speaking, before Zhang Chunren could speak, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, LV Hushan, how can you say that? Have you forgotten what you just said? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan blinked. Yuan Weiqing, what did I say just now? Why don't I remember? Seeing that LV Hushan didn't admit it, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth and said, LV Hushan, you just said that Etianhua won't have any guilt towards me because the injury on my arm was my own fault. I was the one who attacked Etianhua first, so Etianhua hurt me. He only has hatred for me in his heart. There is absolutely no guilt in his heart. Wait a minute, Etianhua saw me in front of him. His first target will definitely be me, definitely not you. At this point, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his words. He snorted coldly and continued speaking. LV Hushan, I'm afraid the reason you asked me to stand in front of him with you is not so that I can support you from the side, but because you know that as long as Etianhua sees me, his first target will definitely be me. LV Hushan, at that time, even with you supporting me from the side, I can be sure that Etianhua will definitely kill me. Don't you think so? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was suddenly startled. Although he thought so, how could he say so? LV Hushan hurriedly shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how is that possible? Why would I think so? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment before continuing. Yuan Weiqing, later on, the two of us will block Etianhua. Etianhua's first target will definitely be me, definitely not you. Don't worry, as long as you support me from the side, there won't be any danger at all. Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, I don't believe you. You've already said it very clearly just now. It's because I ambushed Etianhua that he hates me. When the battle starts later, his resentment towards me will definitely be greater than yours. His first target will definitely be me. LV Hushan waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, don't worry. What I said just now was actually to piss you off. It's not true. It's not like you don't know what kind of person Etianhua is. If he was really the kind of person who would use force, he wouldn't have shown you mercy just now. LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, let me ask you. With Yi Tianhua's martial arts, is it possible for him to kill you just now? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing frowned and pondered for a moment before slowly nodding his head. Yi Tianhua's martial arts are indeed powerful. If he used all his strength on me just now, I would definitely be killed by him. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Yuan Weiqing, see, I'm right. Even if Yi Tianhua knew that you were ambushing him, he wouldn't use force to kill you. You should know very well what kind of person he is, right? At this point, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, so you don't have to worry. Since Yi Tianhua isn't the kind of person who would use force, why would he hurt you? You just have to stay in the front. Yi Tianhua's first target definitely won't be you. You just have to help me block him from the side and there will be no problem at all. Yuan Weiqing, if you stay in the front, my safety will be guaranteed. You also know that my martial arts aren't high. If Yi Tianhua used all his strength on me, I definitely wouldn't be able to block him. If you block him from the side, I won't be in too much danger. Even if I get injured, I definitely won't be killed by him. It's precisely because of this reason that I hope you can stay in the front to help me once, so that I won't be killed by Yi Tianhua. What do you think? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. He smiled bitterly and said, LV Hushan, although what you said makes sense, what if Yi Tianhua holds a grudge against me? Wouldn't that be terrible? LV Hushan waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, how is that possible? Yi Tianhua isn't that kind of ruthless person. He hurt you just now, and the resentment in his heart has already been vented. How could he still hate you? Yuan Weiqing, you were the one who was hurt just now, not him. Even if he has a grudge, it should be you. How could it be him? Don't you think so? After hearing this, Yuan Weiqing frowned and suddenly said, LV Hushan, I think it's better to forget about it. This is all our speculation. If Yi Tianhua really holds a grudge against me, I definitely won't be able to block him. When that time comes, won't I be in trouble? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, it's not a problem for me to stay in the front, but you know how my martial arts are. I can tell you for sure that if Yi Tianhua rushes at me, I definitely won't be able to block his attack. Yuan Weiqing, once he breaks through my line of defense, the people behind may not be safe. Among the three of you, your martial arts are the weakest. If Yi Tianhua really wants to break through one by one, you are undoubtedly the best target. So, I can be sure that once Yi Tianhua breaks through my line of defense, his first target will definitely be you. Yuan Weiqing, by that time, I would have already been killed by Yi Tianhua. Naturally, no one would be able to help you. Don't tell me that you think you can block Yi Tianhua's attack with your martial arts alone? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was startled. Chapter 746. Yuan Weiqing said in a trembling voice, LV Hushan, is what you said true? If Yi Tianhua breaks through your defense, will he really attack me first? LV Hushan nodded and sneered. Yuan Weiqing, if you don't believe me, then you can try. Maybe Yi Tianhua won't be the first to attack you. Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. LV Hushan, are you saying that you and I will be safer in front? Hearing that Yuan Weiqing was going to be fooled, LV Hushan was overjoyed and hurriedly nodded. Yes, as long as the two of us stay in front, no matter who Yi Tianhua attacks, we can take care of each other. There won't be any problems. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly laughed. LV Hushan, you are still lying to me. Who do you think I am? Do you think I don't know that Lu in front is the most dangerous? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his words, he snorted coldly and continued. LV Hushan, you don't have to say that you are afraid, but you still have to scare me. What you are doing is really wrong. If we stop this operation because of your words, then who will bear the losses in this episode? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment before continuing. LV Hushan, don't say too much. You should stay in front obediently. Blocking Yi Tianhua is your greatest contribution. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan blushed. He didn't expect Yuan Weiqing to see through his intentions and was just waiting for him to appear. Thinking of this, LV Hushan said with some annoyance, Yuan Weiqing, why should I stay in front? I have decided to stay in front with you. Otherwise, I won't agree. Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sneered. LV Hushan, if you don't agree, what do you want? LV Hushan said angrily, I also want to stay in the back. My martial arts are so weak, wouldn't it be a waste to stay in front? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren suddenly sneered. LV Hushan, you don't want to stay in front, right? LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, let me stay behind. I promise I won't embarrass you. Zhang Chunren nodded. Yes, but I have to tell you that if you stay at the back, even after the battle is over, you won't be able to practice any higher-level martial arts. LV Hushan, you have to think clearly. If you want to regret it, it will be too late. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was taken aback. He hurriedly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can this be? We just agreed that as long as the battle is over, you can help me practice the upper-level martial arts. How can you go back on your word now? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, the reason why we agreed to help you was that you wanted to stand in the front and make a contribution for us. Because of this reason, we decided to help you. However, you didn't want to stay in the front, so why should we help you? Am I right? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing also hurriedly said, LV Hushan, what Vice Hall Master Zhang said is right, you have not done anything yet, nor have you made any contributions. How can we support you in cultivating a high-level martial arts? LV Hushan, if you want to practice the upper-level martial arts, then stay in the front and block Yi Tianhua's attacks for us. When the time comes, if your performance is good, we naturally won't forget you and will help you practice martial arts. But if you don't go forward to block Yi Tianhua, then we have no obligation to help you. LV Hushan gritted his teeth. Vice Hall Master Zhang, although I really want to practice the upper-level martial arts, I also know that if I stand in the front alone, with my martial arts, it is very likely that I will be killed by Yi Tianhua. Once I am killed by Yi Tianhua, no matter how many chances I have, I'm afraid it will be useless. So, if you want me to go forward alone to block Yi Tianhua, I will definitely not agree. If you want me to practice the upper-level martial arts, I will definitely not agree. Unless there are more than 2 people in front of me, then I will agree. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly became anxious. He hurriedly turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, this won't do. My arm is injured and I can't use my martial arts. If I stand in front, I will definitely be killed by Yi Tianhua. Vice Hall Master Zhang, don't let me stand in front. LV Hushan alone is enough. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked with a smile, LV Hushan, you heard what Yuan Weiqing said just now. What do you think? LV Hushan hurriedly shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this won't do. Among the 4 of us, my martial arts is the weakest. Once I stand in front, there is an 80% to 90% chance that I will be killed by Yi Tianhua. For my safety, we still need more than 2 people to be able to block Yi Tianhua. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, you heard what LV Hushan said just now. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's question, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, don't listen to LV Hushan's nonsense. Tianhua has no enmity with him. Even if he attacked him, he would never go all out. Therefore, I am sure that LV Hushan must be very safe. Perhaps he is even safer than the three of us who stayed behind. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, since you said that the front is safe, then you should stay in front to block Tianhua. Why are you running to the back? Yuan Weiqing waved his hand. LV Hushan, you can't say that. You and I are different. In the battle just now, I sneak attacked Tianhua, but you didn't. Even if Tianhua holds a grudge because I sneak attacked him, he won't hate you because you didn't sneak attack him. LV Hushan, since you didn't sneak attack Tianhua won't hate you. He definitely won't go all out against you. Don't you even understand this point? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Yuan Weiqing, in fact, you should be safer than me. Think about it, Tianhua has already injured you once and even crippled you. In this situation, even if Tianhua's heart is cruel, he will definitely feel guilty towards you. Yuan Weiqing, since Tianhua feels guilty towards you, as long as you think about it, you should know that he definitely won't go all out against you. Don't you understand this point? At this point, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, listen to me. If you stay at the front, you will definitely be safer than staying at the back. If I'm lying, after the battle is over, you can find me to settle the score. At that time, no matter how you hit me, I won't resist. What do you think? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, don't play with me. After the battle, if I listen to you and stay at the front, will I still have a chance to wait until the end of the battle? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, look at what you're saying. How can you not wait until the end of the battle? You can rest assured that Tianhua definitely won't hurt you. However, no one can guarantee that you will be safe behind. Think about it. When Tianhua first attacked, he wasn't sure how strong we were going to be. Maybe he thought that we were just scaring him. Even if he wanted to resist, it wouldn't be too intense. Therefore, you will definitely not be in danger if you stay at the front. However, when Tianhua finds out that we are serious, he will definitely fly into a rage. After he passes through the defensive line, he will definitely be ruthless. Among the three of you who stay at the back, you are the one who is most likely to be attacked by Tianhua. I am sure that Tianhua will definitely attack you first. Do you believe me? At this point, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, you also know Tianhua's martial art. Even if your martial arts were at its peak, you wouldn't be able to take one of his attacks. Moreover, your martial arts have been reduced by more than half. I'm afraid that Tianhua will just wave his hand and you will be killed. At that time, I can't think of anything that can save you this time. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing didn't immediately refute. Instead, he lowered his head and pondered. Although part of LV Hushan's words were nonsense, Yuan Weiqing was also very clear that part of his words was absolutely true. For example, once Tianhua broke through the defensive line, Yuan Weiqing was certain that the first target of his attack would definitely be him. This was because he had once ambushed Tianhua. Just this point alone was enough for Tianhua to never forgive him. Also, he was now seriously injured. When Tianhua attacked him, it would definitely be like what LV Hushan said. Tianhua only needed to make a light move and he would immediately be killed. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing's forehead gradually broke out in cold sweat. He suddenly realized that if he continued to fight with Yi Tianhua, the chances of him surviving were really not high. As for what LV Hushan said about blocking Yi Tianhua's attack from the front, Yuan Weiqing would definitely not do it. He knew that saying that the front was safe was nonsense. With Yi Tianhua's martial arts, whether it was the front or the back, as long as he fought with Yi Tianhua, it would be a dangerous place. Of course, Yuan Weiqing could be sure that although the front and the back were dangerous places, the back was still relatively safer because there was a defensive line in front. Although the defensive line wasn't solid, it could still play a great role. Everyone knew that it was absolutely impossible to let LV Hushan stay in the front alone to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Since it couldn't block Yi Tianhua's attack, why let LV Hushan stay in the front? That was because when Yi Tianhua rushed over, LV Hushan could at least block a little and give everyone time to escape. Don't underestimate the short time that LV Hushan could block. It was quite useful. In such a short time, everyone had enough time to run into the nearby forest. Although Yi Tianhua's martial arts were high, he definitely couldn't use it in the forest. It was precisely because of these reasons that everyone knew that the people in the front were the most dangerous. No matter what, it couldn't change this fact. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing didn't say anything, LV Hushan thought that Yuan Weiqing was moved by his words. He hurriedly continued, Yuan Weiqing, listen to me. Staying in the front is definitely safer than staying in the back. Yi Tianhua definitely won't use his full strength in his first attack. If the two of us work together to block his attack, it won't be a problem. Yuan Weiqing, come on, let's block the front together. We can definitely block Yi Tianhua's attack. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, you don't have to say any more. I understand. You should stay in the front. I'll stay in the back. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren turned to look at LV Hushan and said with a smile, LV Hushan, everyone has already decided. Only you will stay in the front. Speaking up to this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to reply and continued. LV Hushan, although there is a certain amount of danger in the front, didn't you just say that compared to the back, it is at least considered safe? After this battle is over, we will definitely help you complete your goal and cultivate the upper-level martial arts. What do you think? LV Hushan shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this won't do. How can I block the front alone? I definitely won't be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack. We need another person. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren smiled and shook his head. LV Hushan, you don't have to worry. Even if you are crippled like Yuan Weiqing, we will still have a way to help you cultivate the upper-level martial art. You don't have to worry. After hearing this, LV Hushan gritted his teeth and suddenly said loudly, Vice Hall Master Zhang, since you said so, I will withdraw. I will not participate in this operation. Is that okay? Zhang Chunren frowned. LV Hushan, have you really decided? LV Hushan nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, it is too dangerous for me to stay in the front alone. Rather than being killed by Yi Tianhua, it is better for me to withdraw. At least it will be safer. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren let out a sigh. LV Hushan, now that you've made your decision, I've also made my decision. After we go back, we will only build one backroom for you to cultivate in. What do you think? Speaking up to this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but immediately after, without waiting for LV Hushan to reply, he continued. There are also those spiritual herbs, medicines that can increase one's martial arts talent and high-level martial arts. These are not fated with you. Don't tell me you really don't regret it? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, LV Hushan, you have to think carefully. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you persevere, you may become someone like the one-armed saber king in the future. Chapter 747. Yuan Weiqing continued, LV Hushan, even if you're injured, don't worry. Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang will help you. You have to remember that you only have one chance. If you miss it, you'll never get it again. Don't you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly hesitated. He knew that Yuan Weiqing was right. There was only one chance. If he didn't block in front, no matter how great the benefits were, he wouldn't get a share after the battle. Most importantly, even if he didn't get a share, he couldn't say anything. He even had to be humble. LV Hushan understood this logic. However, even if he understood it, he wouldn't dare to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were strong. Even Hall Master Shui wasn't his opponent, let alone LV Hushan. It would be great to become a person like the one-armed saber king, but it would be even better to live. If he was unlucky and was killed by Yi Tianhua, then everything would be over. Thinking of this, LV Hushan raised his head and looked at Yuan Weiqing. He smiled bitterly and said, Yuan Weiqing, I understand what you mean. However, I really can't block in front of him. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, so I've decided that even if I can't practice upper-level martial arts, I definitely won't block Yi Tianhua. It's too dangerous. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was stunned. He thought that LV Hushan would agree, but he didn't expect to be rejected. Yuan Weiqing frowned and asked doubtfully, LV Hushan, don't you want to become a person like the one-armed saber king? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, we are all martial artists. Who doesn't want to master a high level of martial arts? However, you should know how high Yi Tianhua's martial arts are. If you let me stand in front of him, I will definitely be killed. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment before continuing, Yuan Weiqing, if I'm killed by Yi Tianhua, no matter how many benefits there are, I'm afraid I won't be able to get them. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, you are too careful. I can tell you clearly that in the Jianghu, if someone heard that as long as they took a risk, they would be able to cultivate a high-level martial art, then I am certain that countless people would come here to sign up. Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer him. He snorted coldly and continued to speak. LV Hushan, you don't know how to cherish such a good opportunity. Instead, you keep retreating. I really feel sorry for you. Think about it, as long as you persist for a while, you can become a person like the one-armed saber king. This is something that many people dream of. If you don't want to seize this opportunity, are you going to regret it in the future? LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, it's not that I don't want to seize this opportunity, but I also know that my martial arts are too weak. As long as I go up, I'm afraid I'll be killed by Yi Tianhua. What's the use of that? It's also because of this reason that I hope that there are at least two people in front of me. Because if there are two people taking care of each other, maybe they can really block Yi Tianhua's attack. But you want me to block Yi Tianhua alone. I really can't do it, so I can only give up. Seeing that LV Hushan was really about to give up, Yuan Weiqing's forehead gradually broke out in cold sweat. He was also very clear that if LV Hushan gave up, the task of blocking in front of him would fall on him. Although his arm was injured and his fighting strength weakened a lot, Yuan Weiqing was still certain that he would definitely be sent to the front to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Yuan Weiqing had fought with Yi Tianhua before, so he naturally knew how terrifying Yi Tianhua's martial arts were. It was also because of this reason that he didn't dare to go forward to block Yi Tianhua. He originally thought that LV Hushan would stay in front of him in order to practice the upper-level martial arts. But he never thought that LV Hushan would be so cunning that he would definitely not go forward. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing had a headache. He couldn't let LV Hushan give up because if LV Hushan went forward, he would have to go in front to block. Yuan Weiqing composed himself and said with a forced smile, LV Hushan, could it be that the upper-level martial arts are really not important to you? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how is that possible? Who doesn't want to practice the upper-level martial arts? But, if you want to practice the upper-level martial arts, you have to at least be alive. If you are killed, how can you practice? I'm afraid that you won't even be able to practice the lower-level martial arts. Yuan Weiqing frowned. LV Hushan, think about it carefully. If you persist for a while, how much benefits will you get? Do you know how many gold coins a kind of elixir that can increase one's strength costs? If you don't have this opportunity, I'm afraid that you won't even be able to get a single elixir. LV Hushan, as long as you eat that elixir, you can immediately increase your strength. Don't you know? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of light. How could he not know the effects of the elixir? Although the effects of the elixir were different and some were strong and some were weak, the common characteristic of the elixir was that it could increase a person's strength. As long as you eat these elixirs, you can easily increase your strength. Yuan Weiqing saw that LV Hushan was somewhat tempted and hurriedly continued, LV Hushan, as long as we succeed this time, we can buy a large number of elixirs to practice the upper-level martial arts. Speaking up to here, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his words and continued to speak. LV Hushan, if you want to practice the upper-level martial arts, just the upper-level martial arts won't be enough. You must have the help of these elixirs. But most of these elixirs are quite precious. If we don't have a lot of gold coins, we won't be able to buy them. So, for our future goals, LV Hushan, you should stay. Don't give up. As long as you work hard, we will definitely succeed. LV Hushan, when you become someone like the one-armed Saber King, you will be grateful to me. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, I know you are saying this for my own good, but it is absolutely impossible for me to block Yi Tianhua alone. I also know that I can't block Yi Tianhua. LV Hushan turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, if you agree to block in front with me, I will stay. What do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. LV Hushan, why bother? I am now crippled and only have 1 or 2 levels of martial arts left. Even if I stay in front, I won't be able to help you much. I might even cause trouble for you. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused before he continued. LV Hushan, think about it. If I'm not in front, you can move freely and fight however you want. But with me, you can't. You have to cooperate with me. So I think that if I stay, I'm afraid you will be in more danger. LV Hushan, listen to me. You should stay in front alone. This is the best choice. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, I really can't do this. My martial arts are so low. Yi Tianhua can easily defeat me with one hand. How can I fight? Yuan Weiqing, it is different with you. The two of us, one on the left and one on the right. No matter who Yi Tianhua attacks first, he will be attacked from behind. The two of us will form a two-sided siege. He will definitely be at a loss. At that time, won't we be safer? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing's frown deepened. He waved his hand. LV Hushan, listen to me. You can't be wrong. If I stay in front, I won't be able to help you. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer, he continued. LV Hushan, just like you said just now, when Yi Tianhua attacks us, he will be easily attacked from behind. I admit that you are right. But don't forget that I am now seriously injured. I don't have much martial arts left. If the two of us are in front once Tianhua attacks us, even if he attacks you first, with my current martial arts, even if I see it, Yuan Weiqing won't be able to stop it in time, let alone attack from both sides. So, I think that once Tianhua attacks LV Hushan, you should use a guerrilla tactic. This is the safest way. Don't you think so? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned. He suddenly realized that Yuan Weiqing's words seemed to make sense. When Tianhua rushes over, why should he fight him head-on? He couldn't beat him. If he fought him head-on, wouldn't he be looking for trouble? But if he followed Yuan Weiqing's words and used a guerrilla tactic, it would really be safer. When Tianhua rushes over, I just need to dodge. Why should I block him like an idiot? After understanding this point, a smile appeared on LV Hushan's face. He looked up at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, you are right. I really forgot this point. When Tianhua rushes over, why should I fight him head-on? Can't I just dodge? As long as I dodge, how can Tianhua hurt me? In that case, Yuan Weiqing, I have decided to stay. Hearing LV Hushan's decision to stay, Yuan Weiqing was overjoyed. He quickly said with a smile, LV Hushan, it's great that you can understand this point. Congratulations. After this battle, we can immediately practice the upper-level martial arts. After saying this, Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at LV Hushan and said jokingly, LV Hushan, when the time comes, we should compete to see who can practice martial arts faster. What do you think? After LV Hushan knew that he was safe, his mood relaxed a lot. Seeing Yuan Weiqing joking with him, he smiled and said, Yuan Weiqing, you can rest assured. When the time comes, we must have a good competition and see who can cultivate martial arts faster. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was even more happy. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly heard Zhang Chunren snort. LV Hushan, what did you just say? When Tianhua rushes over, you are going to use a guerrilla tactic, right? Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Vice Hall Leader Zhang, you are right. As long as Tianhua attacks me, I will immediately use a guerrilla tactic. I believe that Tianhua can't hurt me. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, although Tianhua can't hurt you, you can't stop him either. Speaking up to this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. But immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question. He sneered and continued. LV Hushan, I sent you to the front to block Tianhua and not let him rush to the back. However, when you saw him rush over, you said that you were going to use a guerrilla tactic. But in fact, when you saw Tianhua rush over, you turned around and ran. LV Hushan, it doesn't matter if you run, but who will block Tianhua? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan's face suddenly changed. He did have this idea just now. As long as Tianhua rushed over, he would immediately turn around and run. Tianhua definitely wouldn't be able to catch up with him. However, such a perfect plan was seen through by Zhang Chunren. This wasn't good. LV Hushan forced a smile and said, Vice Hall Leader Zhang, how can I turn around and run? I am using a guerrilla tactic. Vice Hall Leader Zhang, do you know about guerrilla tactics? Speaking up to this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment. But immediately after, he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer his question and continued. Vice Hall Leader Zhang, let me tell you. The guerrilla tactic is to avoid direct contact with the enemy. This is very suitable for a battle where the enemy is strong and I am weak. Instead, I will attack the enemy from the side. This way, you can pin down the enemy and not let the enemy attack you. You might even have an opportunity to injure the enemy. This is simply killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Vice Hall Leader Zhang, this method is definitely not the kind of turn around and run that you mentioned. It is a tactic. Hearing LV Hushan's explanation, Zhang Chunren sneered and waved his hand. LV Hushan, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. I just want to ask you, once you use guerrilla tactics to run, will Tianhua rush to the back? Then let me ask you, who will block Tianhua? Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, Vice Hall Leader Zhang, I don't think so. If I use this tactic, I should be able to pin down Tianhua and prevent him from breaking through my defense line. So, Vice Hall Leader Zhang, you can rest assured. Chapter 748. Zhang Chunren sneered. LV Hushan, your mission at the front is to block Tianhua and not let him rush over. But if you run away and Tianhua rushes over, how can I be at ease? Yuan Weiqing also hurriedly said, LV Hushan, is the guerrilla tactic you mentioned really to escape? Hearing the two's question, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. How is that possible? You also know that my martial arts are not high. If I fight Tianhua head-on, I definitely won't be his opponent. I might not even be able to take one move from him. How can I stop him? But if I use this method to fight Tianhua, I will be able to last for a long time. As long as I block in front, how can Tianhua rush over? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. What's more, even if Tianhua rushes over, I'm still behind him. As long as I attack him from behind, he'll definitely turn around to face me. At that time, won't you all be safe? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Zhang Chunren and asked with a frown, Vice Hall Master Zhang, what do you think? Zhang Chunren sneered. LV Hushan, I only know that if you run away, there will be no one in front to block Tianhua. At that time, the three people behind us will definitely be attacked by Tianhua. More importantly, once Tianhua attacks us, our attack on him will naturally stop. Since we can't attack, how can we catch Tianhua? Zhang Chunren turned to look at LV Hushan and sneered. LV Hushan, you block in front. Don't use your tactic. You only need to block Tianhua. That's enough. Do you understand? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was shocked and asked quickly, Vice Hall Master Zhang, you mean to say that I should block Tianhua from the front? Zhang Chunren nodded. That's right, LV Hushan. You have to block Tianhua's attack head-on. As for the tactic you mentioned, it's useless. Other than allowing Tianhua to come over, it won't help us at all. Do you understand? Hearing Zhang Chunren's answer, LV Hushan frowned. Vice Hall Master Zhang, it's impossible for me to block Tianhua from the front. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer his question and continued to speak. Vice Hall Master Zhang, you know my martial arts. If we were to fight head-on, how could I block Tianhua's attack by myself? Vice Hall Master Zhang, I think I should use that kind of guerrilla warfare to block Tianhua's attack. Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, you want to use that method just to make it easier for you to escape. I will never agree to that. Since you have decided to stay in the front, you must block Tianhua for me. Do you understand? LV Hushan shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, my martial arts are definitely not Tianhua's match. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren frowned. LV Hushan, I'm not asking you to catch Tianhua. I'm just asking you to block him. What's so difficult about that? Even if your martial arts are not as good as his, it shouldn't be difficult for me to do this, right? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if my martial arts are not Tianhua's match, how can I block him? Zhang Chunren sighed. LV Hushan, did you forget what we said just now? If you want to block Tianhua's attack, You don't have to rely on martial arts. Do you understand? LV Hushan shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I'm not familiar with Tianhua. Other than martial arts, what else can I do to block him? Zhang Chunren clenched his teeth. LV Hushan, you said it yourself. Tianhua definitely won't be heavy-handed in his first attack, because he doesn't know what we're trying to do. Since Tianhua won't be heavy-handed in his first attack, you naturally won't be in danger during his first attack. By the time the second attack comes, the three of us might have already defeated Tianhua. At that time, won't you be safe? LV Hushan hurriedly shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this is just your excuse. If you can't defeat Tianhua in such a short time, won't I be killed by him when he launches his second attack? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren shook his head. LV Hushan, in the first attack, Tianhua won't be heavy-handed, so you'll be safe. But in the second attack, Tianhua has already been injured by us. Even if he launches a second attack, it won't be very powerful. As long as you block it with all your strength, I believe that you won't die in the second attack. LV Hushan, trust me. My calculations won't be wrong. Stand in front. As long as you block 2 attacks with all your strength, we'll definitely be able to defeat Tianhua. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan frowned. Vice Hall Master Zhang, what if your guess is wrong? What if Tianhua uses all his strength in the second attack? What should I do? Zhang Chunren waved his hand. LV Hushan, don't worry. I can guarantee that even if Tianhua attacks you twice, there won't be any problems. He won't be able to hurt you. Looking at the confident Zhang Chunren, LV Hushan was extremely unconfident. He didn't believe Zhang Chunren's words because he knew how high Tianhua's martial arts were. Even if Tianhua was seriously injured, he could probably kill him with a wave of his hand. How could LV Hushan be at ease when the difference in strength between the two sides was so great? Thinking of this, LV Hushan sighed and said slowly, Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you want me to use guerrilla tactics, I can block in front. But if you want me to fight Tianhua head-on, then please forgive me for not being able to do it. LV Hushan turned to look at Zhang Chunren and said with a bitter smile, Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you're not satisfied with my method, then please find someone else. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren couldn't help but frown. LV Hushan, you really won't regret it? LV Hushan smiled bitterly. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this is no longer a matter of regret. If I'm killed by Tianhua, I'm afraid I won't even have the chance to regret it. If I don't participate in this operation, although I may regret it in the future, I will at least have the chance to regret it. Between the two, I choose the latter. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren suddenly sighed. LV Hushan, I originally planned to find you a medicine that can increase your martial arts talent. It seems that we don't need it anymore. We only need to find a medicine that can increase your martial arts talent. That's enough, don't you think? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer, he continued. LV Hushan, you have to know that the medicine that can increase martial arts talent is definitely very rare. Even if you want to find one, I'm afraid it's extremely difficult, let alone 2. However, I don't have to worry about it now because I don't need to find it for you. I only need to find one and give it to you on Weiqing. Don't you think so? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan gritted his teeth and felt a little regret. He had only heard of this medicine that could increase martial arts talent, but he had never seen it before. With his status, he really didn't have the qualifications to see such a precious medicinal herb. He heard from others that this medicine that could increase martial arts talent was very rare in the world. This was because the effect of this medicine was really heaven-defying. It could actually turn a person with a low martial arts talent into a person with extremely high martial arts talent. LV Hushan was a person who practiced martial arts. He naturally knew that a person's martial arts talent would determine their future achievements. The higher one's martial arts talent was, the higher one's achievements would be. Everyone knew this. Therefore, those with low martial arts talent would be extremely jealous of those with high martial arts talent. If there was such a medicine that could change martial arts talent, LV Hushan was certain that everyone would fight over it. Now, he actually had the opportunity to use the medicine that could change martial arts talent. This was simply like a dream. Although the chances of obtaining this medicine were not very high, this was still an opportunity. LV Hushan knew very well that if he relied on himself, he would never have the chance to see this medicine in his life. However, with the help of Deputy Hall Chief Zhang and Hall Chief Shui, as well as Yi Tianhua, he might really be able to find this medicine. Don't forget that Yi Tianhua was the boss of the Shadow Alliance in South County. He could order the Shadow Alliance to find these medicinal herbs. The Shadow Alliance was an alliance that specialized in finding things. With their help, there might really be a glimmer of hope. LV Hushan thought that if he really found this medicine in the future, it would be used by Yuan Weiqing because he didn't participate in the battle. From then on, Yuan Weiqing's martial arts talent had changed. With the support of many spiritual herbs and brilliant martial arts, he believed that it wouldn't be long before he could break out of seclusion and become an expert of his generation. When he thought of this, LV Hushan felt a little upset. He secretly hated the people in front of him for being unfair to him. Yuan Weiqing could hide in the back, but why did he have to block in front? LV Hushan was displeased. He wanted to give up this opportunity, but he was also a little reluctant because he knew very well that this was his only chance. Most importantly, if he withdrew this time, how could he continue to stay in the secret Thunder sect of South County? Perhaps after leaving this place, it would be the time for him to withdraw from the secret Thunder sect of South County. LV Hushan knew that once he left the secret Thunder sect of South County, he would really be nothing. Zhang Chunren, who was at the side, saw LV Hushan's expression and sneered in his heart. He knew that LV Hushan was already a little tempted. No matter what the reason was, LV Hushan was a little tempted. LV Hushan, you have to think carefully. As long as you persevere through this, your future will be bright. However, if you really want to withdraw, I can guarantee that you will regret it in the future. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan said with a bitter smile, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I know that, but if you let me block in front alone, how can I block it? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer his question and continued to speak. Vice Hall Chief Zhang, Yi Tianhua's martial arts are so powerful that even Master Shui is no match for him. Needless to say, my martial arts are far inferior to Hall Chief Shui's. How can I block Yi Tianhua's charge? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren waved his hand and said with a smile, LV Hushan, do you believe me? At this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for LV Hushan to answer him. LV Hushan, I can tell you clearly that if you block in front, you will only be able to last 2 rounds at most. This battle should be over. We have already said that Yi Tianhua will not be too harsh on you in the first round of attacks, so you should not be worried. What you should be worried about is the second round of attacks. LV Hushan, I also admit that the second round of attacks is indeed dangerous, but don't forget that everything in this world is dangerous. There is no such thing as a free lunch. LV Hushan, if you want to cultivate high-level martial arts, you will need a large amount of spiritual herbs, as well as herbs that can increase your martial arts talent. Think about it, how much will we have to pay to nurture you? Now is the time for you to perform. If you perform well, we will definitely support you fully. Of course, if you want to give up, I will definitely not stop you because there are too many people who want to benefit from this. As long as I spread the news, there will be plenty of people who will come here to block Tianhua for us. LV Hushan, do you think that those who are willing to block Tianhua in front of us are all stronger than Tianhua? No, that is impossible. Their martial arts are definitely not stronger than Tianhua's, but why are they willing to take such a risk? It is because they are very clear that although it is dangerous to block in front, they also know that once they succeed, they will gain even more benefit. LV Hushan, do you still not understand that the more you give, the more you will gain? I have said so much. If you still want to give up, then I will definitely not stop you because you are too unambitious. We also do not want to nurture such a person, do you understand? After hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and suddenly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I am not convinced. Since Yuan Weiqing and I both want to cultivate high-level martial arts, why can he hide in the back while I have to block in front? After hearing this, Zhang Chunren smiled slightly and said faintly, LV Hushan, I am doing this for your own good. Do you still not understand? LV Hushan looked at Zhang Chunren with some doubt. Vice Hall Master Zhang, you are saying that this is for my own good. Chapter 749. Zhang Chunren nodded and said with a smile, LV Hushan, I'll tell you the truth. Even if we have 10 million gold coins, it's impossible to use all of them to buy elixirs. This is because these gold coins still need to be used to buy other things, such as elixirs that can increase one's martial arts talent and high-level martial arts. This means that the amount of gold coins that can be used to buy elixirs is not much, so the elixirs that can be bought are naturally limited. At this point, Zhang Chuanren's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he did not wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued speaking. LV Hushan, for example, if you buy a total of 5 elixirs, and there are 2 people who want to distribute them, then let me ask you, how should you distribute them? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, LV Hushan immediately said, Of course, the person who contributes the most will get more. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren nodded. LV Hushan, you're right, the person who contributes the most will get more. Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at LV Hushan and said with a smile, LV Hushan, for the 5 elixirs, the person who contributes the most will get 3 elixirs, and the person who contributes the least will only get 2 elixirs. Am I right? At this point, Zhang Chuanren's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he did not wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued speaking. LV Hushan, don't underestimate an additional elixir. With each additional elixir, one's strength will increase by a lot. With an increase in strength, the speed of martial arts cultivation will naturally be faster. A person who takes 2 elixirs may need 80 years to cultivate to the upper level of martial art. However, a person who takes 3 elixirs will only need 60 years to cultivate to the upper level of martial art. With this comparison, LV Hushan, you should understand the usefulness of an additional elixir, right? Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly understood and hurriedly asked, Vice Hall Master Zhang, you mean that if I block in front, I can get 3 elixirs? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren smiled and nodded. What do you think? Although Zhang Chunren did not answer directly, LV Hushan had already understood and was immediately overjoyed. Just as he was about to speak, Yuan Weiqing suddenly spoke. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I don't agree. Although it is important for LV Hushan to block in front, I also contribute to everyone. Have you forgotten how my arm was injured? At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused, but immediately after, he did not wait for Zhang Chuanren's words. He raised his injured arm and continued speaking. Look, isn't the injury on my arm serious enough? Don't tell me that such a serious injury doesn't count as a great contribution? So, I think that even if LV Hushan is in front of me when it comes to dividing the spiritual herbs, I should get the most. Vice Hall Master Zhang, Don't you think so? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren frowned. He turned to look at LV Hushan and said with a smile, LV Hushan, you've heard what Yuan Weiqing said, right? His contribution is not small, but you haven't made any contribution yet. Therefore, you shouldn't have any complaints about being in the front, right? LV Hushan shook his head and said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, if I'm in the front and get more spiritual herbs, I'll accept it. But if I get less spiritual herbs than Yuan Weiqing, I won't agree. As soon as LV Hushan finished speaking, Yuan Weiqing did not wait for Zhang Chunren to speak and said first, LV Hushan, although you are blocking in front, there is no danger. How can you compare with me? Don't forget that in order to sneak attack Tianhua, my arm was crippled by him. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered, Yuan Weiqing, you actually dare to say that there is no danger in blocking in front. Fine, I will block in front and you block Tianhua. At that time, even if you get more elixirs than me, I will have no complaints. What do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. LV Hushan, how can we do that? Vice Hall Master Zhang, the allocation has already been decided. How can we change it? LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, you want more elixirs, but you don't want to block Tianhua in front. How can there be so many good things in the world waiting for you? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, you have two choices now. One, you can stand in front and block Tianhua's attacks for us. When the time comes, you can get a bigger share of the spiritual herbs. I won't have any complaints about that. The second choice is that you stay at the back. Of course, when the elixirs are divided, you will get less elixirs than me. What do you think? Yuan Weiqing, you choose. No matter which option you choose, I will support you. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was suddenly stunned. For a moment, he was speechless. He did not want to choose either of the two options that LV Hushan mentioned because he was very clear that no matter what, the person in front was the most dangerous person. However, just because he did not block in front when the elixirs were divided, he was not willing to get less. Because Zhang Chunren was right. Even if he had 10 million gold coins, there was a limit to the number of elixirs that could be bought. Most importantly, when the elixirs were divided, sometimes there was no way to divide them equally. If he was given an extra elixir, the cultivation time would be greatly reduced. Originally, it would take 80 years to cultivate a martial art. After taking an extra elixir, he might be able to cultivate it in 60 years. This was reducing his cultivation time by 20 years. In that 1-meter-wide secret chamber, Yuan Weiqing was not willing to stay for even a moment, let alone 20 years. If it was possible, Yuan Weiqing wished that he could go to the secret chamber today and cultivate it tomorrow. Therefore, no matter what, the elixirs could not be divided less. This would affect a lot of time. The most important thing was that if two people cultivated martial arts together, one person would still be in the secret chamber practicing hard, while the other person, because he had taken an extra elixir, reduced his cultivation time and had already cultivated a high-grade martial art. He would have rushed out of the secret chamber and be free and unfettered outside. When he thought of this result, Yuan Weiqing's heart was somewhat unbalanced. If he cultivated by himself, no matter how fast or slow his cultivation speed was, no one would be able to compete with him. But if two people cultivated together, there would be competitors. Once the cultivation speed was slow, even if the cultivation was successful, it would take a long time and it would definitely be a loss of face. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing looked up at LV Hushan and slowly said, LV Hushan, even if you blocked in front, you did not suffer any injuries. Therefore, your contribution is definitely not as big as mine. Do you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered, Yuan Weiqing, The battle has not started yet. How do you know that I won't be injured? Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment before he continued. Maybe, my injuries are more serious than yours. What should we do then? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, this is impossible. Even if Yi Tianhua attacked you, he would never attack you with full strength. How could you be injured? LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, why can't I be injured? Why can't Yi Tianhua attack me with full strength? Could it be that Yi Tianhua is my relative, so he won't attack me with full strength? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing's expression suddenly changed. He wanted to defend himself, but there was nothing he could say. He could only turn his head to look at Zhang Chunren and quickly say, Vice Hall Master Zhang, you saw my performance just now. I ambushed Yi Tianhua just now. If it wasn't for my good luck, I might have been killed by him. I have already done such a dangerous thing. My contribution should be quite high, right? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, of course it's not low. You are so seriously injured. How can I say that your contribution is not enough? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. However, Yuan Weiqing, although your contribution is also very high, don't forget that LV Hushan will be blocking in front and blocking Yi Tianhua's attack for us. You also know Yi Tianhua's martial arts. Can you guarantee that LV Hushan will not be seriously injured? What if LV Hushan is more seriously injured than you? Doesn't that mean that his contribution is greater than yours? Don't you think so? Hearing this, LV Hushan was shocked. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and hurriedly said, Yuan Weiqing, if you are not satisfied, the two of us can switch positions. You block in front and I will stay behind. When it is time to split the spiritual herbs, I will definitely not fight with you. What do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned and thought for a long time. Suddenly, he raised his head to look at LV Hushan and said with a smile, LV Hushan, I am now seriously injured. If you want me to block in front alone, I will definitely not be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Who knows, I might even ruin everyone's plan. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment before continuing, LV Hushan, why don't we do what we said just now? The two of us will block in front. When Yi Tianhua attacks us, the two of us will attack Yi Tianhua from the left and right. I believe that Yi Tianhua will be worried about the two of us attacking together. He will definitely not be able to deal a heavy blow. At that time, both of us will be safe. LV Hushan, what do you think of this idea? If you agree, we will do it like this. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, this won't do. I can't agree. If you want to stay in front, then you can stay behind. I will go to the back. If you don't want to stay in front, don't regret it when it is time to split the spiritual herbs. After Yuan Weiqing heard this, he was stunned. He did not expect that LV Hushan's idea would be rejected at this moment. Yuan Weiqing had already calculated that if they followed LV Hushan's plan, the two of them would stand in front of him. Even if the two of them did not suffer any injuries after the battle ended, Yuan Weiqing was sure that he would be able to get a bigger share of the elixirs. Because Yuan Weiqing also blocked in front, it could be considered a merit. Then, he sneak-attacked Yi Tianhua in advance and was injured by Yi Tianhua. This should also be considered a merit. Therefore, after calculating, he had 2 shares of merit, while LV Hushan only had 1 share of merit. Therefore, when the spirit herbs were distributed, he would definitely be able to obtain more spirit herbs. The most important thing was that if the two of them stayed in front, the danger would be reduced by half. This was because no one knew who Yi Tianhua's first target would be. Although the analysis just now was very thorough, after all, it was just a random guess. Who could really guarantee who Tianhua would attack first? If Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan stayed in front, then the chances of them being attacked would only be half. It was because of these reasons that Yuan Weiqing decided to agree to LV Hushan's initial plan. But he never thought that although he agreed, LV Hushan would not agree. Yuan Weiqing would never agree to let him stand in front of Tianhua. He was only left with 20% or 30% of his martial art. Given his current level of martial arts, Yuan Weiqing was sure that even if Tianhua attacked him with all his might, he would still be killed. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing frowned. He raised his head and looked at LV Hushan. He smiled and said, "LV Hushan, you have to think carefully. If the two of us stay in front, we can form a situation where we are surrounded. At that time, no matter who Tianhua wants to attack, he will be attacked from behind. So his attack will definitely not be too strong. If we cooperate like this, wouldn't it be better than fighting alone?" LV Hushan shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, if you want to stay in front, I will not refuse. I will also not fight with you. I will let you stay in front. If you don't want to stay in front, then you can go to the back. I will stay in front. However, I hope you won't regret it in the future." Hearing that LV Hushan still did not agree, Yuan Weiqing was a little annoyed. "LV Hushan, why are you so stubborn? If one person stays in front, it will be really dangerous. But if the two of us stay in front, this kind of danger will be reduced a lot. Don't you understand?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, do you think I don't understand? You are wrong. I understand everything. It is because I understand that I will definitely not stay in front with you. Do you understand?" Yuan Weiqing could not help but frown. "LV Hushan, what do you mean? Why don't you want to stay in front with me? This is good for both of us. Is there something wrong with that?" LV Hushan suddenly sneered. "Yuan Weiqing, if I stay in front with you, then the credit of blocking in front will belong to the two of us. However, you have more contribution than me in the sneak attack on Tianhua. So, if I stay in front, I will only help you block Tianhua and increase the danger. I will not get more elixirs. Do you think I don't know that?" Chapter 750. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing's face turned slightly red. He didn't expect LV Hushan to have seen through this and even said it out loud. This made him very embarrassed. However, although Yuan Weiqing felt embarrassed, he also knew that even if it was embarrassing, he still had to finish his word. Otherwise, would he really have to go up and block Tianhua alone? Yuan Weiqing composed himself and said with a forced smile, "LV Hushan, why would you think that? I won't do that. The reason why I left you in front is because I don't want to take advantage of you. LV Hushan, think about it. If those spiritual herbs were distributed according to contribution, then how many spiritual herbs would I get if I was in front?" At this point, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. "LV Hushan, you have to think clearly. If I stand in front of you, my contribution will be much greater than yours. At that time, I can guarantee you that you won't be able to get much of the elixirs. Maybe you can even get 10% of it. Don't you understand?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan couldn't help but frown. "Yuan Weiqing, are you saying that I can only get a little bit of the spiritual herbs?" Yuan Weiqing sighed. "LV Hushan, think about it. Up until now, how much contribution have you made? Do you think 10% of the spiritual herbs is too little?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. "Yuan Weiqing, don't forget how in Hongda and the others were defeated. If it wasn't for me, how could it be so easy? Isn't this a contribution?" Yuan Weiqing sighed. "LV Hushan, It's because you made such a small contribution that I'm giving you 10% of the spiritual herbs. Otherwise, I'm afraid that you wouldn't even have a share of this." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned. After a while, he asked in a trembling voice, "If I stayed behind to fight, wouldn't it be a contribution?" Yuan Weiqing sighed. "LV Hushan, what do you think?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan hurriedly turned around and looked at Zhang Chunren. "Deputy Head Zhang, say something. Will it be considered a contribution if I stay behind?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren sighed and slowly said, "LV Hushan, you also know that among us your martial arts are the weakest. If you stay behind, think about it, even if we catch Tianhua, how much strength can you contribute?" After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. After a while, he asked in a trembling voice, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, although my martial arts are the weakest, my technique of throwing the thunderbolt pill is very strong. I believe that even if I stay at the back, I will play a great role. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you only give me a little contribution, isn't that a little unfair?" Zhang Chunren sneered as he shook his head. "LV Hushan, don't you think this is fair enough?" Speaking up to this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued to speak. "LV Hushan, you have to understand that with your martial arts, without us, it is absolutely impossible for you to catch Tianhua. And you staying behind is even more dispensable. Even without you, do you think that Hall Master Shui and I together won't be able to catch Tianhua?" Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, "LV Hushan, Vice Hall Master Zhang is right. In fact, both of our martial arts are very weak. Naturally, we won't be of much use. LV Hushan, think about it. If Vice Hall Master Zhang and Hall Master Shui stay at the front while the two of us stay behind, do you think that with our techniques and martial arts, we can catch Tianhua?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned once again. Although she didn't want to admit it, she had to admit that if what Yuan Weiqing said was true, Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang would stay in the front while the two of them would stay behind to attack. If that was really the case, LV Hushan really had no confidence in catching Tianhua. Yuan Weiqing saw that LV Hushan lowered his head and remained silent. He sighed. "LV Hushan, now that things have come to this, you should also understand that our martial arts are the weakest. We are the most suitable to block the front. Although Tianhua's martial arts are strong, don't forget that he might not be able to attack us with all his might. This is our chance. As long as we seize this opportunity, we will definitely be able to block Tianhua's attack. LV Hushan, don't hesitate. Stand at the front with me. There will definitely be no problem." Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan gritted his teeth. "Yuan Weiqing, I can stay at the front, but you have to promise me that if I stay at the front, when it is time to split the spiritual medicine, we will split it equally. What do you think?" At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to reply, he continued. "Yuan Weiqing, if you agree to this, then I will promise you that I will stay at the front." Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing could not help but frown. He persuaded LV Hushan to stay not because he wanted to split the spiritual medicine equally with him, but because he wanted to use LV Hushan to share some of Tianhua's attack. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing was frowning, LV Hushan sneered. "Yuan Weiqing, I knew you were lying to me. Even if I stay at the front, you will not split the spiritual medicine equally with me. Since that is the case, I have decided to back out." Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was shocked. Just as he was about to speak, Zhang Chunren suddenly said, "LV Hushan, since you said so, then I promise you. As long as you stay at the front, you and Yuan Weiqing can split the spiritual medicine equally." Is that okay? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, LV Hushan was overjoyed. He hurriedly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, as long as you keep your word, I will stay at the front and block Tianhua for you. Although LV Hushan was happy, Yuan Weiqing was not satisfied. This was because if he and LV Hushan split the spiritual medicine equally, he would be at a disadvantage. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing would definitely not agree. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this isn't fair. My arm has already suffered such a heavy injury, and I'm also in the front. If I still have to share the spiritual herbs with LV Hushan, then wouldn't I be at a disadvantage? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren could not help but frown. He slowly said, Yuan Weiqing, now that things have come to this, we have to look at the big picture. You and LV Hushan's martial arts are not high. If either of you stay, it is very likely that Tianhua will break through the defense line. Only if the two of you work together can you block Tianhua's attack. Therefore, I think that Yuan Weiqing, even if you are at a disadvantage, in order to catch Tianhua, I think this is it. Don't argue any more. Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can this be? My arm is so badly injured, and I still have to split the spiritual medicine equally with him. No matter what, I will not agree. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, Zhang Chunren frowned. He lowered his voice and said, Yuan Weiqing, if you don't agree, then you will have to stand at the front alone. Are you confident that you can block Tianhua's attack? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's face suddenly changed. He said in a trembling voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can this be? Tianhua is very skilled in martial arts. How can I block him alone? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, Zhang Chunren sighed. Yuan Weiqing, if LV Hushan backs out, then you will have to stand at the front alone. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing asked in a trembling voice. Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can it be me alone? Don't I have you? As long as the two of us stand at the front, I believe that no matter how skilled Tianhua is, he will not be able to break through our defense line. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how can this be? If I stand at the front, then who will attack Tianhua? Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Shuizhijing and said in a low voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, isn't there still Hall Master Shui? Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Zhang Chuanren's reply and continued to speak. Vice Hall Master Zhang, Hall Master Shui knows the Heavenly Star technique. Even if he stands at the back alone, he will definitely be able to catch Tianhua. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and sneered. Yuan Weiqing, do you really think that Hall Master Shui can catch Tianhua alone? Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He snorted coldly and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, this is impossible. Tianhua is skilled in martial arts. Hall Master Shui alone will not be able to catch Tianhua. We will have to work together to catch Tianhua. Don't you understand? When Yuan Weiqing heard this, he hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I don't think so. Although Tianhua's martial arts are strong, Hall Master Shui's martial arts are not bad either. In addition, he has a secret technique. Perhaps he really can catch Tianhua alone. Zhang Chunren shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, this is not a small matter. If we can't catch Tianhua, all our plans will be in vain. Do you understand? Therefore, in order to increase our chances of success, we have to treat this matter seriously. Whether or not Hall Master Shui can capture Tianhua alone, I have to stay and work with him. Because only by doing so will we have a greater chance of success. Yuan Weiqing, do you understand? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, Hall Master Shui just said that as long as he stands at the back alone, he can defeat Tianhua. Why don't we believe him? Speaking to this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for Zhang Chunren to answer and continued. Vice Hall Master Zhang, listen to me. If LV Hushan is not willing to participate, let him go. With the two of us in front, there will be no problem. Vice Hall Master Zhang, Yi Tianhua harmed your son, so he must feel very guilty towards you. He will not be too harsh on you, so don't worry. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren's expression changed. He sneered and said, Yuan Weiqing, do you think that I'm staying behind because I'm afraid? Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He snorted coldly and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you, this is impossible. Why would I be afraid? Yi Tianhua harmed my son. If he wants to harm me again, then let him come. I don't care. Yuan Weiqing, as for you, why don't you stand at the front alone? Are you afraid? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Hall Master Zhang, how could that be? If I was afraid, I would not have attacked Yi Tianhua. Am I right, Vice Hall Master Zhang? Saying this, Yuan Weiqing sighed in his heart. If he had known that Yi Tianhua's martial arts were so strong, he would not have attacked Yi Tianhua. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction. Yuan Weiqing, I know that you are not afraid. If you were really afraid, you would not have attacked Yi Tianhua. So, I need you to stand at the front. Do you agree? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was stunned. After a while, he asked tentatively, Vice Hall Master Zhang, do you really want me, a cripple, to stand at the front? As he said this, Yuan Weiqing deliberately stretched out his broken arm and waved it in front of Zhang Chunren. Seeing Yuan Weiqing's injured arm, Zhang Chunren frowned. After a while, he lowered his voice and said, Yuan Weiqing, listen to me. Let LV Hushan join in. The two of you will stand at the front together. Only then will you have a chance of winning. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if LV Hushan and I stand at the front together, he wants to share the elixirs with me. I will never agree. His contribution is not as great as mine. If he wants a share, I can only give him 10 to 20%. If he gets more, won't I be at a disadvantage? After hearing this, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. He said loudly, Yuan Weiqing, how am I taking advantage of you? Everyone is standing at the front together. Our contribution is the same. How am I taking advantage of you? Yuan Weiqing, if you don't want to, I can withdraw. However, I will never think that I am taking advantage of you. Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked at LV Hushan. He sneered and said, LV Hushan, since you said that you are not taking advantage of me, then you should break one of your arms. This way, I won't think that you are taking advantage of me. What do you think? You? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly flew into a rage. He shouted, Yuan Weiqing, you are too unreasonable. Your arm was injured by Yi Tianhua. You can only blame yourself for not being good enough. How can you blame me? Your arm is injured. Does my arm have to be injured too? Chapter 751. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, if you want to share the spiritual herbs with me, then this is the only way. If you agree, then I will stand in front of you and fight against Yi Tianhua together. LV Hushan gritted his teeth and said, Yuan Weiqing, do you want me to break an arm before you're satisfied? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, you're wrong. This is not to satisfy me, but to be fair. Do you understand? What I want is fairness. Since you want to share the elixirs with me, then the injuries we suffer should be the same, right? LV Hushan sneered and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you, I won't break my arm for no reason. If you dare to stand in front of Yi Tianhua alone, then I won't stop you. I won't share the spiritual herbs with you either. What do you think? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment and then said angrily, "LV Hushan, what do you mean by this? Originally, I wanted you to stand in front of me. How did it become me standing in front of you?" LV Hushan sighed. "I originally wanted to share the spiritual herbs with you, but you didn't agree. Then why did I step forward? Don't you think so?" Seeing that the two of them were getting more and more tense, Zhang Chunren hurriedly said, "You two, stop arguing. Let me say something." Speaking up to here, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for the two of them to answer him. "LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, the two of you stand in front of me. When it's time to split the spiritual herbs, Yuan Weiqing will get 60% and LV Hushan will get 40%. What do you think?" Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, my arm is broken. Why is it only 10%? I don't agree." Speaking up to here, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer him. He snorted and continued. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you let me agree, I will get 70% and LV Hushan will get 30%. Is this okay?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered. "Yuan Weiqing, you must be dreaming. You can have 70%, but I will have 30%. Don't even think about it." LV Hushan turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and said with a sneer, "Deputy Hall Master Zhang, if we divide according to Yuan Weiqing's words, then I will get 40% less than him. I will never agree." After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing said angrily, "LV Hushan, you think I got too much? Do you think I suffered the injury on my arm for nothing?" LV Hushan shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, I'm not an unreasonable person. If you had a bit more than me, I wouldn't have minded. But you have 4 levels more than me. How could I agree?" Zhang Chunren hurriedly said, "Yuan Weiqing, since LV Hushan thinks that your share is too much, then you will still get 60%, and he will get 40%, and you will get 20% more than him. Isn't that good?" Yuan Weiqing shook his head. "Deputy Hall Master Zhang, my arm is already crippled. If I can't get more elixirs, then my contribution will be in vain." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered. "Yuan Weiqing, how can your contribution be in vain? Don't forget, you will get 20% more elixirs than me. What is there to be dissatisfied with?" After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing said angrily, "LV Hushan, if you want, we can divide it equally. As long as you promise me that you will break your arm, then we will have a deal. What do you think?" LV Hushan shook his head. "Nothing. Your arm was broken because of you. It has nothing to do with me. Why should I break my arm? Just to make you happy? What a joke." Yuan Weiqing nodded. "LV Hushan, if you want to make me unhappy, then I will get 70% of the elixirs, and you can only get 30%. Will that make you happy?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan said with some annoyance, "Yuan Weiqing, I have already said that you will get 70% of the elixirs, and I will get 30%. I will never agree to this division." Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. "LV Hushan, if you don't agree, then you can only break your arm, so we can divide it equally." LV Hushan gritted his teeth. "Yuan Weiqing, let me ask you. If I also break my arm, you will be satisfied, but how will we resist Etianhua?" Hearing these words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. Only then did he remember that the battle had not yet begun. If LV Hushan also broke his arm, then how could they resist Etianhua? Seeing that Yuan Weiqing did not speak, LV Hushan sneered. "Yuan Weiqing, the battle has not yet begun. It seems meaningless for us to talk about this." Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren also smiled and said, "Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan is right. I think everything should wait until the battle is over. What do you think?" Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I can promise you, but you also have to promise me that after the battle, if LV Hushan is not seriously injured, then I will get 70% of the elixirs. What do you think? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly became angry. Yuan Weiqing, the battle has not yet begun, and you want to divide the spoils. I will never agree. Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked at LV Hushan. He sneered and said, LV Hushan, I am just saying this in advance. If someone does not admit it, then it will be troublesome. LV Hushan turned his head and glared at Yuan Weiqing. He said angrily, Everyone is standing in the front. Why should you get more and I get less? Yuan Weiqing raised his broken arm and said with a sneer, LV Hushan, based on this, do you have it? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his words, he snorted coldly and continued. LV Hushan, if you are not convinced, you can also become like me. I naturally will not compete with you. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was so angry that his breathing became rapid. He suddenly turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and asked anxiously. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I will listen to you. Tell me, after the battle is over, how should we divide it? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren could not help but frown. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, I think you should lower your conditions a little. What do you think? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, we haven't caught Yi Tianhua yet. You should agree first. After we catch Yi Tianhua, it won't be too late for us to talk about these things. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if some things are not made clear first, it will be very troublesome when the time comes, so I think that we should make things clear first and do what we should do. Otherwise, after the battle is over, some people will feel that they are at a disadvantage. At that time, it will be difficult to talk about it. Vice Hall Master Zhang, don't you think so? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered. Without waiting for Zhang Chunren to speak, he said first, Yuan Weiqing, I think the one who is afraid of being at a disadvantage is you. No matter what, if you want me to participate in the battle and block Yi Tianhua, then we can only split it equally. Otherwise, don't even think about making me agree. When Yuan Weiqing heard this, he immediately said angrily, LV Hushan, if you don't want to participate, then forget it. No one is forcing you. If you don't participate, then it's good. No one will fight with me for the spiritual herbs. Hearing this, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, you said it yourself. When Yi Tianhua attacks you later, don't regret it. Seeing that the two were quarreling again, Zhang Chunren could only frown and say, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, the two of you stop talking. Is there anything you can't discuss? LV Hushan said angrily, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I want to discuss it with him, but he doesn't want to discuss it with me. What can I do? Yuan Weiqing sneered. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if he really wants to discuss it, then let's do it according to my distribution method. In short, my injuries can't be in vain. They have to be included in the contribution. Otherwise, I won't accept it. After hearing the two's words, Zhang Chunren nodded. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, I understand what the two of you mean. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for the two to answer his words, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, because your arm is injured, you think that your contribution is greater, and you want to get more, right? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded. Of course. Otherwise, wouldn't my injuries be in vain? Vice Hall Master Zhang, you have to make a decision for me. Don't let him take advantage of me. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly became angry. Just as he was about to speak, Zhang Chunren hurriedly waved his hand and interrupted him. LV Hushan, don't say anything. Let me ask you. You mean that you want to stand in front and wait until the battle is over, then you and Yuan Weiqing will share the spiritual herbs equally, right? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, of course. Everyone fought together. Of course, we will get the same amount of spiritual herbs. What's so strange about this? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing said angrily, LV Hushan, my arm is injured. Why can't I get a little more? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, if you just want a little more, I have nothing to say. But if you want to get 40% more than me, I will never agree. Hearing this, Zhang Chunren waved his hand, indicating that the two should stop talking. Then, he slowly said, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, the problem that the two of you are struggling with is nothing more than how much spiritual herbs can be divided. This is a small matter. The most important thing for us now is how to catch Etianhua. Otherwise, it's useless no matter what we say. Don't you understand? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, LV Hushan wants to take advantage of me. How can I agree? LV Hushan sneered and said, Yuan Weiqing, you want 40% more spiritual herbs than me. Do you think I will agree? Zhang Chunren waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, how about this? You two have a good discussion about how to divide it. It is the most reasonable. Speaking until here, Zhang Chunren's tone paused. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and continued, Yuan Weiqing, you tell me. How much do you want to get 70% of the spiritual herbs? Are you satisfied? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I don't think that 70% of the elixirs is much. Don't forget, I've lost an arm. Could it be that my arm isn't worth this price? After hearing this, Zhang Chunren nodded but did not answer. Instead, he turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked in a deep voice, LV Hushan, what do you think? How much of the spiritual herbs do you want? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan frowned. After a while, he slowly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I am a reasonable person. Yuan Weiqing's arm is injured, so it is reasonable for him to get more elixirs. However, I also participated in the battle. You can't give me less. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused and continued, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I think it is better to give me 40% of the spiritual herbs. What do you think? Hearing the answer of the two, Zhang Chunren nodded and said faintly, LV Hushan, you want 40% of the spiritual herbs. Yuan Weiqing, you want 70% of the spiritual herbs, right? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, you are right. Zhang Chunren glanced at the two people in front of him and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, this matter is easy to solve. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for the two to answer his words, he continued. This matter is settled. Yuan Weiqing, you get 70% of the spiritual herbs. LV Hushan, you get 40% of the spiritual herbs. Isn't this matter settled? What else is there to argue about? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, everyone present was taken aback. Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan exclaimed at the same time, Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can this be? Zhang Chunren waved his hand. What's wrong with that? Let's divide all the elixirs into 11 portions. Yuan Weiqing, you get 7 portions. LV Hushan, you get 4 portions. Isn't that enough? What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan were stunned on the spot. For a moment they were speechless. Seeing that the two of them were silent, Zhang Chunren frowned. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, are you not satisfied with my distribution method? Speaking of this, Zhang Chuanren's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for the two of them to answer his words, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, don't forget, you were the ones who asked for the percentage of the elixirs. I've already satisfied your request, isn't that enough? What else are you dissatisfied with? Chapter 752. Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, although Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan both got a satisfactory share, they felt like they had suffered a loss. However, they couldn't figure out where they had suffered a loss. They could only stare blankly at Zhang Chuanren, unable to speak for a while. Seeing that the two of them were silent, Zhang Chuanren coughed lightly and slowly said, "Since you have no objections, then let's do it this way. The two of you will block the front, Hall Master Shui and I will attack Tianhua from behind. Do you understand?" After hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan nodded blankly. Seeing that the two of them finally stopped quarreling and agreed to his suggestion, Zhang Chuanren nodded in satisfaction. He turned to look at Shui Zhijing and said with a smile, "Hall Master Shui, the matter has been resolved. The two of us will stay behind to attack Tianhua, while the two of them will block the front. This will prevent Tianhua from breaking through their defense and directly attacking the two of us. What do you think?" Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Shui Zhijing nodded. "Okay, since you have agreed, then it's decided." At this point, Shui Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Zhang Chuanren to answer him and continued speaking. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, when we attack later, you will be on the left and I will be on the right. We will attack Tianhua from both sides. What do you think?" Hearing this, Zhang Chuanren couldn't help but frown. "Hall Master Shui, I don't think that's a good idea. The two of us should stay together to increase our attack power. If we split up, wouldn't our attack power be spread out?" Shui Zhijing shook his head. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can that be? If we attack from both sides and form a two-sided siege, it will be difficult for Tianhua to defend. Isn't that a good idea?" Zhang Chuanren shook his head. "Hall Master Shui, I don't think that's a good idea. We should stay together and attack Tianhua together. That's the best idea." Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Shui Zhijing laughed. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you don't understand. My heavenly star technique covers a large area. Even with your help, it won't increase the attack power by much. Rather than that, why don't you stay on the other side and we attack from two sides? That way, we'll be able to increase our attack power. Do you understand?" After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chuanren was stunned for a moment, but he quickly shook his head. "Hall Master Shui, only when we gather our strength will our attack power increase. If we scatter, it will only be detrimental to our strength. Therefore, I still think that Hall Master Shui, our best choice is to attack together." Zhang Chuanren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Shui Zhijing's reply and continued to speak. "Hall Master Shui, think about it. If we attack Tianhua from two directions, Tianhua only needs to dodge a little bit to dodge half of the attack. He only needs to block half of the attack. Then our attack power will be reduced by half. Don't you think so?" Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Shui Zhijing shook his head. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you're wrong. Although we're attacking from two directions, your attack power is definitely not as good as mine. Even if Tianhua dodges your attack, my attack power will not be reduced by much. Therefore, Vice Hall Master Zhang, you don't have to worry about this." After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chuanren was stunned for a moment before shaking his head. "Hall Master Shui, although my attack power is not as good as yours, what if Tianhua dodges your attack? Then won't we have to rely on my attack to deal with him?" Hearing Zhang Chuanren's words, Shui Zhijing was about to speak when LV Hushan suddenly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, if your attack power is not enough, you can add mine. Although my martial arts are not as good as yours, My technique of throwing the thunderbolt pill is really good. If the two of us join forces, we definitely won't be much weaker than Hall Master Shue's attack. Vice Hall Master Zhang, what do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment. He turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked doubtfully, LV Hushan, if you hide at the back, when it's time to split the spiritual medicine with Yuan Weiqing, you'll get very little. Won't you regret it? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan sighed. Vice Hall Master Zhang, when the time comes, although I'll get very little spiritual medicine, in order to catch Yi Tianhua, I can only do this. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer his question and continued to speak. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you and Hall Master Shui attack separately, then your attack power is really not as good as Hall Master Shui's. I think you know this very well. If the strength of the attacks from both sides is not the same, it will be very disadvantageous for us. Therefore, in order to better carry out our plan, I thought that if I join forces with the two of you, in terms of attack power, even if it's slightly weaker than Hall Master Shui's, it definitely won't be much weaker. This way, the attack power of both sides will be balanced, and we'll be more confident in catching Yi Tianhua. Vice Hall Master Zhang, don't you think so? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren frowned. LV Hushan, do you really not regret it? If you stay at the back, even if we catch Yi Tianhua, you'll get very little spiritual medicine. LV Hushan shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, don't worry. For everyone, even if I get less spiritual medicine, I'm willing. Saying this, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He was definitely not such a generous person. The reason he said this was because he understood something. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were very strong. In terms of martial arts, LV Hushan was very clear that even if the four of them joined forces, they might not necessarily be Yi Tianhua's match. Under such circumstances, choosing to block Yi Tianhua's attack was undoubtedly a foolish action. It was precisely because of this that LV Hushan did not plan to block in front from the beginning. However, because of the matter of practicing martial arts, LV Hushan decided to take a risk and fight for a future for himself. After the excitement passed, LV Hushan thought carefully. He suddenly understood that even if he blocked in front, he might not be able to practice those advanced martial arts. This was because Yi Tianhua's martial arts were very strong. Even if he and Yuan Weiqing joined forces to block in front, LV Hushan was very clear that he and Yuan Weiqing were 90% sure that they would not be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were so strong. If they could not block his attack, there would only be one outcome, and that was to be killed by Yi Tianhua. Since he was already dead, even if there were more elixirs and high-level martial arts waiting for him to cultivate, it would all be in vain. It would be of no use. It was precisely because of this reason that LV Hushan decided to retreat from the front and hide in the back. Of course, this was not because LV Hushan did not want to practice martial arts, but because he already understood that there was only one outcome if he blocked in front. Even if he hid in the back, once the matter was successful, Yuan Weiqing would definitely be killed by Yi Tianhua. Then, not only would he be able to practice the advanced martial arts, no one would fight with him for the spiritual medicine. This was not the best outcome. LV Hushan had already calculated very clearly. After this battle, Yuan Weiqing would definitely be finished, and he would be the one who would benefit the most. It was precisely because of this that LV Hushan decided to retreat to the back. At least, he would protect himself first. Seeing that LV Hushan was going to hide in the back, Yuan Weiqing was suddenly shocked and hurriedly asked, LV Hushan, if you hide in the back, you will only get 1/10 of the spiritual medicine. Are you really not going to fight with me? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan pretended to sigh. Yuan Weiqing, it's not that I don't want to fight with you. If I also block in the front, Vice Hall Master Zhang and Hall Master Shui's attacks will not be balanced. So, in order to have a greater chance of catching Yi Tianhua, I can only go to the back and join the attack sequence. Speaking up to here, LV Hushan's tone paused, sighed, and continued, Yuan Weiqing, I have no other choice, so I made this choice. After this matter is successful, I hope that you will give me 1/10 of the spiritual medicine because of my efforts. What do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. LV Hushan, this is impossible. If you retreat to the back, I can only give you 1/10 of the spiritual medicine. I hope you will choose carefully. When the time comes, don't regret it. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He knew that as long as the battle started, with Yi Tianhua's martial arts, Yuan Weiqing would definitely not be able to escape. When the time came, all the spiritual medicine would belong to him. Why would he care about the 10 or 20%? Yuan Weiqing, this can't be helped. Yi Tianhua's martial arts are very strong. If our attack power is not enough, we will definitely not be able to catch him. So, I can only attack from the back. Speaking up to here, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for Yuan Weiqing to reply and continued speaking. As for the 10th of the spiritual medicine, that can't be helped. I only hope that after you master your martial arts, you will not forget that we helped you before. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, since LV Hushan doesn't need to share the spiritual medicine with you and you are the only one left in front, you have to be careful later. You must block Yi Tianhua, do you understand? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing remembered that other than sharing the spiritual medicine, he also had to block Yi Tianhua, who was very strong in martial arts. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Yi Tianhua and was shocked. Once again, he recalled the scene of him sneaking an attack on Yi Tianhua. Cold sweat slowly appeared on his forehead. When he sneaked an attack on Yi Tianhua just now, Yuan Weiqing had already used all his strength. Even so, Yi Tianhua did not use much strength. Yuan Weiqing only saw the flash of a sword in front of him, and he was struck back by the sword. At the same time, he lost an arm. Yuan Weiqing's forehead was drenched in cold sweat as he recalled the dazzling sword light from before. He suddenly realized that it was no longer a matter of how many spiritual herbs he would get, but rather, how to block Yi Tianhua's attack. If he joined forces with LV Hushan, although they would not be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack, Yuan Weiqing knew that he was at least 50% confident that Yi Tianhua would not attack him. This meant that he was 50% confident that he would not be attacked by Yi Tianhua. However, once LV Hushan retreated, then Yi Tianhua's attack would definitely land on him. At that time, what would he use to block Yi Tianhua? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly realized that he could not let LV Hushan retreat to the back. Once LV Hushan retreated to the back, he would face Yi Tianhua's attack. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing did not answer his question, Zhang Chunren could not help but frown and asked again, Yuan Weiqing, why aren't you saying anything? Quickly answer my question. Can you block Yi Tianhua's attack? Zhang Chunren's questioning woke Yuan Weiqing up. He raised his head and looked at Zhang Chunren. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. After a while, he turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked in a trembling voice, LV Hushan, don't tell me you really want to hide at the back? LV Hushan nodded and sighed. Yuan Weiqing, in order to increase our chances, I can only attack from the back. I hope you can understand my difficulties. Yuan Weiqing shook his head. No, I think you should stay at the front and block Yi Tianhua together with me. What do you think? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment and then shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how can I do that? I already said that the attack from the back is not balanced. This will make it easy for Tianhua to escape, so I should stay at the back. This will increase our chances of catching Tianhua. After hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly became annoyed and said loudly, "LV Hushan, you can't do this. If you hide in the back, do you think I can block Tianhua's attack by myself?" Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He turned to Zhang Chunren and said quickly, "Don't worry, Zhang Chunren. Vice Hall Master Zhang, you all know how high Tianhua's martial arts are. Do you really think that you can block Tianhua with just martial arts?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and said slowly, "Yuan Weiqing, I've said it before. Actually, you don't have to worry. Tianhua injured you before, so he definitely feels guilty. Even if he attacks you, he won't use his full strength. So you don't have to worry. Even if Tianhua's martial arts is strong, as long as he doesn't hit you too hard, you won't be in danger. Yuan Weiqing, don't be afraid, it'll be fine. We believe in you." Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, "Yuan Weiqing, Vice Hall Master Zhang is right. Tianhua is not an unreasonable person. He won't hit you hard, so you can rest assured." Chapter 753. After hearing Zhang Chunren and LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing said in a trembling voice, "I understand what you are saying, but what if Tianhua hits me hard? What should I do?" Looking at the pale Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He knew very well that once he attacked Tianhua, even if Tianhua's temper was very good, he would definitely explode. At that time, Yuan Weiqing, who was at the front, would definitely be the first to bear the brunt and be crushed by the angry Tianhua. However, LV Hushan would never say these words. If Yuan Weiqing understood this truth, then the person in front of him would be him. Thinking of this, LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, "Yuan Weiqing, in fact, you really don't have to worry. Even if Tianhua attacks you, when he sees your injured arm, he will definitely feel guilty. At that time, I promise you that he won't hit you hard. If you don't believe me, you can ask Vice Hall Master Zhang. He will definitely explain it to you." After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Zhang Chunren and asked with a trembling voice, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, is what LV Hushan said true? Tianhua really won't hit me hard?" Zhang Chunren smiled and shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, you can rest assured. There will definitely be no problem. You have been in contact with Tianhua for so long. Don't you understand him? Don't worry, LV Hushan is right. Tianhua won't hurt you heavily because he once injured your arm. With his temper, he won't hurt you again no matter what." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I also know this, but I am still worried." Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused before he continued, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, why don't you let LV Hushan and me stand in front together? This way, the two of us can more or less take care of each other. What do you think?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded. "Okay, but this matter involves the distribution of the spiritual herbs. You should discuss it among yourselves." As soon as Zhang Chunren finished speaking, LV Hushan hurriedly said, "Yuan Weiqing, there's no need. I'll stay at the back. If I go to the front, it will weaken our attack power. If we can't catch Tianhua because of the lack of attack power, then it will be too late for regret." After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. "LV Hushan, your martial arts aren't high. Even if you stay at the back, you won't be able to increase your attack power by much. It's better if you stay at the front with me." Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. "If the two of us block Tianhua at the front, we'll be able to buy a lot of time for those behind us. LV Hushan, listen to me. It won't go wrong. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how can we do that? If we want to catch Yi Tianhua, our attack power must be strong. If our attack power isn't enough, even if Yi Tianhua can't rush over, it won't help. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was a little annoyed. LV Hushan, your martial arts aren't high. Even if you stay at the back, how much attack power can you increase? I think it's better for you to stay at the front. That's the best choice. LV Hushan shook his head again. Yuan Weiqing, that won't do. I've already said that I won't share the spiritual herbs with you. I'll stay at the back. LV Hushan paused for a moment before continuing. Yuan Weiqing, for the sake of you being able to practice the higher level of martial arts in the future, it's better not to talk about it anymore. You should think about how to block Yi Tianhua's attack. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. He suddenly remembered that LV Hushan had quarreled with him for the sake of sharing the spiritual herbs with him. Why did he take the initiative to back out now? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing's frown deepened. He was thinking hard in his heart. Why? Could it be that there was something more important than those spiritual herbs? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing raised his head and looked at LV Hushan. He asked tentatively, LV Hushan, if you stay at the back, I'm afraid you won't be able to get any of those spiritual herbs that can increase martial arts talent. Don't you regret it? Hearing Yuan Weiqing mention the spiritual herbs that can increase martial arts talent, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment, but then he waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, I've already said that if I stay at the back, my contribution won't be much. I can get less of those spiritual herbs. If there's only one portion of spiritual herbs that can increase martial arts talent, I definitely won't fight with you. You should be relieved now, right? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was even more puzzled. LV Hushan, it's not just those spiritual herbs that can increase martial arts talent. I'm afraid you won't be able to get the higher level of martial arts. LV Hushan waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, it's better not to say it. I've already said that no matter what, I won't fight with you. As he said this, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He was very clear that although Yuan Weiqing was speaking very well now, when the battle was over, no one could guarantee that Yuan Weiqing would still be there. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were so powerful. With only 20 to 30% of Yuan Weiqing's martial arts left, Yi Tianhua could easily kill him with one hand. Yuan Weiqing frowned. He was even more puzzled in his heart. Could it be that there was really something more important than those spiritual herbs and martial arts? After thinking about it, Yuan Weiqing couldn't think of anything more important than those spiritual herbs and martial arts. However, his heart was still tense. It was as if there was something that he hadn't thought of. What was it? If there were no accidents after this battle, because LV Hushan was standing at the back, he could only get a very small amount of spirit herbs. Although it would be of some help to his martial arts, if he wanted to rely on this small amount of spirit herbs to cultivate to the upper level of martial arts, it was absolutely impossible. There was also the spiritual herbs that could increase martial arts talent and the higher level of martial arts. LV Hushan couldn't get any of these. Could it be that LV Hushan really didn't want to cultivate the higher level of martial arts and become the second one-armed saber king in South County? Yuan Weiqing really couldn't understand. As a martial artist, how could he be so unambitious? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing sneered in his heart. Since LV Hushan didn't have any ambition, then he didn't have to be polite. As long as he succeeded in this battle, he could cultivate martial arts smoothly. At that time, even if LV Hushan was envious, it would be useless. Because in this battle, LV Hushan didn't do much, so naturally, he didn't contribute much. At the very beginning, because of the sneak attack on Yi Tianhua, although he lost an arm, he also contributed a lot. In addition, He was in front of Yi Tianhua. In terms of contribution, LV Hushan was much worse than him. However, the only thing he was worried about was Yi Tianhua's martial art. Whether he could block Yi Tianhua or not was still uncertain. If he had LV Hushan's help, he still had a high chance of winning. However, without LV Hushan, he was afraid that he really couldn't block Yi Tianhua's attack. If he couldn't block Yi Tianhua's attack, Yuan Weiqing naturally knew what would happen. Thinking of this, his heart couldn't help but shudder. As his body trembled, Yuan Weiqing suddenly thought of something. If he was really killed by Yi Tianhua, what should he do? At that time, even if he caught Yi Tianhua, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to get anything, let alone cultivate any martial arts. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing's forehead broke out in cold sweat. He suddenly understood what LV Hushan was planning. If he were to fight with Yi Tianhua again and was killed by Yi Tianhua, then he would naturally not be able to share the elixirs with him. At that time, those precious elixirs and the high-level martial arts, especially the elixirs that could change one's martial arts talent, would all belong to LV Hushan? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing only felt his heart beating violently. He completely understood why LV Hushan didn't want to share the spiritual herbs with him and wanted to hide at the back. This was because LV Hushan's real goal was to wait until he was killed by Yi Tianhua so that all the spiritual herbs would belong to him. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. He felt that it was a close call. If he hadn't thought of this in time, wouldn't he have fallen into LV Hushan's trap? At that time, he would be foolishly standing in front of Yi Tianhua. When he was killed by Yi Tianhua, LV Hushan would be secretly laughing at the side. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing was so angry that he was about to fly into a rage. However, he held it in because he knew that there was no point in being angry. This was because this choice wasn't forced by LV Hushan. It was his own choice. Although he made this choice because LV Hushan was scheming against him, Yuan Weiqing was also very clear that if he didn't want to get more spiritual herbs, he naturally wouldn't have fallen into this trap. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing raised his head and looked at LV Hushan. A trace of a smile appeared on his face as he slowly said, "LV Hushan, among us your martial arts are the weakest. Therefore, the person who should cultivate martial arts the most should be you." Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer him and continued speaking. "LV Hushan, so I've decided to give this good opportunity to you. Are you happy? When the time comes, LV Hushan, you will be in front of me. Who knows, maybe in the end, your contribution will be greater than mine. Maybe when it's time to split the spiritual herbs, you will get more than me. How about it? Are you satisfied?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned and hurriedly waved his hand. "Yuan Weiqing, how can you do this? These are your contributions. How can I snatch them from you? So forget it. You stay in front. I only want a little spiritual herbs." Yuan Weiqing waved his hand. "How can this be? Your martial arts are the weakest. Think about it. When everyone was in trouble in the past, everyone protected you. Don't you want to improve your martial arts so that you can repay us when we are in trouble?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. "Yuan Weiqing, you are wrong. In the past, my martial arts were the weakest. But now it is different." At this point, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, he continued. "Yuan Weiqing, your arm is broken. You only have 20 to 30% of your martial arts left. Even if your arm is healed, the remaining martial arts will definitely not be much. In this way, the person with the lowest martial arts among us should be you. So I think that you are the one who should practice martial arts the most. Otherwise, you will be a cripple for the rest of your life. Are you willing to do that?" After hearing these words, Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, I understand what you mean. You don't have to worry about me. Don't forget, even if I don't practice martial arts, I still have 1 million gold coins. LV Hushan, if I have 1 million gold coins, can't I enjoy life? It's mainly because your martial arts are too low, and you don't have 1 million gold coins to enjoy life, so you have to improve your martial arts. Otherwise, in the future, you will owe more favors, and you will need more people to protect you. Then, your job as a protector will be meaningless. LV Hushan, listen to me. Work hard to improve your strength. This is the best way. And now is your best chance. You must seize it. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan had already guessed that Yuan Weiqing might have already seen through his thoughts. However, even if Yuan Weiqing saw through his thoughts, LV Hushan was not worried at all. Since Yuan Weiqing had already agreed to stand in front of him, as long as he did not replace him, in the end, even if Yuan Weiqing was unwilling, he could only stand in front of him. Thinking of this, LV Hushan smiled faintly. Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to be polite. Although my martial arts are not high, my position as a protector was also obtained through my martial arts. It was not obtained through everyone's help. Although my martial arts cannot be compared to the one-armed saber king, if I use it to deal with ordinary people, I believe it will not be a problem. Moreover, now that I am old, it is a bit late to want to practice martial arts. So I have also accepted my fate. I have decided to practice martial arts when I have the chance. If I don't have the chance, I have no complaint. Yuan Weiqing, I'm here to bless you. I hope that your martial arts training will go smoothly after this battle is over, and that you'll become a character like the one-armed saber king one day. Don't let us, the people who are helping you, down. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was somewhat annoyed. LV Hushan, how can you be like this? Do you think that I alone can block Yi Tianhua's attack? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, you can rest assured that there will be no problem. Because Yi Tianhua feels guilty towards you, he will definitely not attack you heavily. When the time comes, as long as you block 1 or 2 of his attacks, with the strength of the 3 of us, we will definitely be able to take down Yi Tianhua as soon as possible. You will be safe. Chapter 754. After hearing LV Hushan's words, not only did Yuan Weiqing not feel relieved, he became even more worried. LV Hushan, this won't do. I won't agree. You have to stay at the front. The 2 of us will block Yi Tianhua together. Otherwise, I won't agree. LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, you chose to stand at the front. I didn't force you to. Since you chose it, then do it. Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, although I chose it, I'm going back on my words now. I want the 2 of us to stand at the front. Do you agree? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, the attacks from the back are insufficient. I have to stay at the back. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, don't say any more. You only need to block 1 or 2 attacks from Yi Tianhua. At that time, no one will split the elixirs with you. Isn't that great? What are you dissatisfied with? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sneered. LV Hushan, no. If I stand at the front alone, I'm afraid that the person who needs to practice martial arts will be you, right? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned. Then, he hurriedly waved his hand and forced a smile. Yuan Weiqing, look at what you're saying. You're obviously the one who contributed the most. How can the person who practiced martial arts be me? Don't joke around, I'll take it seriously. Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, you don't have to say any more. I know what you're thinking. You want to wait for Yi Tianhua to kill me so that you can practice martial arts, right? At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for LV Hushan to reply, he continued. LV Hushan, although your idea is good, let me tell you, it's impossible. Even if I agree to it, do you think that you can get what you want? Seeing that Yuan Weiqing had already seen through his thoughts, LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, I have already said that I will not compete with you for those spiritual herbs, is it not enough? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and spoke with a sneer. LV Hushan, if I don't tell you, then your idea will never come true. Don't forget, I can't block Yi Tianhua's attacks alone. Maybe Yi Tianhua will kill me in the first round and break through my line of defense. Yuan Weiqing paused and turned to look at LV Hushan. LV Hushan, if Yi Tianhua breaks through my defensive line, who do you think his first target will be? He asked with a cold smile. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. Then, he waved his hand. How can that be? How can Yi Tianhua break through your defense line so easily? If I'm not wrong, he will need at least 2 attacks before he can really deal a heavy blow to you. At that time, he will break through your defense line and rush to the back. But at that time, I believe that under the joint attack of the 3 of us, Yi Tianhua will probably be injured by us. What is there to worry about? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, don't lie to me and don't lie to yourself. I can assure you that once we attack Yi Tianhua, he won't hold back this time. He will definitely attack with all his strength. At that time, I'm afraid that none of us will be a match for him in one move. LV Hushan, even if you hide in the back, you will definitely not be safe. Because once Yi Tianhua breaks through your defense line, I dare say that his first target will definitely be you. There is absolutely no doubt about this. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused and turned to look at LV Hushan. He sneered and asked, LV Hushan, do you think that you can block Yi Tianhua's attack with your martial arts? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, even if Yi Tianhua breaks through your defense line, how can you be sure that his first target will be me? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, you still don't believe me? Let me tell you, once Yi Tianhua breaks through my defense line, the first person he will attack will definitely be you. Do you believe me? LV Hushan shook his head. I don't believe you. There are 3 people behind us. How can he attack me first? You must be scaring me, right? Yuan Weiqing ignored LV Hushan's words and said directly, LV Hushan, think about it. Even if Yi Tianhua breaks through my defense line, do you think he will attack Hall Leader Shui? At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he did not wait for LV Hushan to reply and continued speaking. No, I can tell you with certainty that he will definitely not attack Hall Leader Shui, because once he attacks Hall Leader Shui, it will immediately cause a fight between the 2 gangs. Yi Tianhua does not want to cause a fight between the 2 gangs, so even if he wants to attack Hall Leader Shui, I'm afraid he will leave it until the last one. Do you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, you're the one who said it. When the time comes, who knows what will happen? Who knows who Yi Tianhua will really make a move on? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, I don't care if you believe it or not, but this is the truth. No matter what, Yi Tianhua won't be the first to attack Hall Master Shui. He will only leave Hall Master Shui to the end. Perhaps in the end, the 2 of them won't fight. Also, let's talk about whether Yi Tianhua will attack Vice Hall Leader Zhang first. I can tell you with certainty that he won't. Vice Hall Leader Zhang's son was in an accident. Think about it, would Yi Tianhua still attack him? Therefore, Yi Tianhua's first target will definitely be you, someone who has nothing to do with him. LV Hushan, this is all true. I won't lie to you. No matter what the result is, as long as Yi Tianhua breaks through my defense line, then the next unlucky one will be you. Do you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Cold sweat gradually appeared on LV Hushan's forehead. He originally thought that if he hid at the back and there were 3 people behind him, even if Tianhua broke through the front line of defense, he wouldn't necessarily do anything to him. It was because of this that he was completely at ease. However, after hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly realized that Yuan Weiqing was right. What he said might really happen. Hall leader Shui was the hall leader of the secret Thunder sect in the South region. Once Tianhua attacked him, it meant that there would be a fight between the 2 gangs. From what happened just now, it could be seen that Tianhua did not want to cause a fight between the 2 gangs. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing was right. Tianhua's first target would definitely not be Hall leader Shui. And Vice Hall leader Zhang could not be his first target because Tianhua would definitely feel guilty if Vice Hall leader Zhang's son was killed. Under such circumstances, even LV Hushan did not believe that Tianhua would attack Vice Hall leader Zhang. Since Tianhua could not attack Hall leader Shui and Vice Hall leader Zhang after breaking through the defense line, then the first target would undoubtedly be him. Thinking of this, more cold sweat appeared on LV Hushan's forehead. After a while, he looked up at Yuan Weiqing and said in a trembling voice, "Yuan Weiqing, you're lying to me, right?" Seeing LV Hushan's sweaty appearance, Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. "LV Hushan, if you and I were to stand in front, perhaps Tianhua's first target would be me and not you? As long as Tianhua attacks me, then you'll be safe. What's there to worry about, right?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, that's impossible. Even if I stand in front, Tianhua's first target will probably be me, not you." Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, he continued to speak. "Yuan Weiqing, don't lie to me. Tianhua once injured you. He must feel guilty about it. When the time comes, why would he attack you first? His first target will definitely be me, an unrelated person. If he does this, at least he won't feel guilty, right?" After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sighed. Then he slowly said, "LV Hushan, you're wrong. Tianhua won't feel guilty towards me because I was indeed the one who launched a sneak attack on him and was forced to retaliate. That's why I was injured. The most important thing is that when I attacked him with all my strength, he already felt it. He knows that I attacked him with all my strength, so he must be dissatisfied. In addition, I put forward a lot of conditions to him just now. He will definitely hate me even more. LV Hushan, in this situation, as long as our team attacks, his first target will definitely be me because he hates me for sneaking an attack on him. He hates me for putting forward various conditions to him. In short, he won't let me go. On the contrary, you, an outsider, should be much safer because you didn't sneak an attack on him or put forward various conditions to him. Therefore, his first target will definitely be me, not you. Do you understand?" After hearing this, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. He pondered carefully in his heart whether Yuan Weiqing's words made sense. LV Hushan had already realized that if Yuan Weiqing was alone in front of him and he stayed behind, it really didn't seem safe. Yuan Weiqing's martial arts were already very weak. As long as Tianhua attacked, he would immediately be defeated and break through the defense line. At that time, as long as Tianhua broke through the defense line set up by Yuan Weiqing, his first target would definitely be him. Thinking of Tianhua's beautiful sword light, LV Hushan was sure that he definitely wouldn't be able to block it. This meant that if he stayed behind, it might be even more dangerous. If he stayed in front, things would really develop as Yuan Weiqing said. Tianhua's first target would be Yuan Weiqing. Then, he would only be a bystander and definitely wouldn't be hurt. The crux of the problem was, would Tianhua's first target really be himself like Yuan Weiqing said? LV Hushan carefully thought about what Yuan Weiqing said just now and gradually believed what Yuan Weiqing said in his heart. Just now, it was indeed Yuan Weiqing who sneaked an attack on Yi Tianhua. Moreover, it was indeed a sneak attack with all his strength. After the sneak attack, Yuan Weiqing raised many conditions to Yi Tianhua. These conditions were very harsh and Yi Tianhua was already a little annoyed. Since Yi Tianhua was a little annoyed, would his first target be so annoyed that he wanted to get rid of Yuan Weiqing? If Yi Tianhua really thought so, then wouldn't he be safe? Seeing that LV Hushan lowered his head and didn't say anything, Yuan Weiqing sneered in his heart and said slowly, "LV Hushan, don't hesitate. Don't tell me you don't believe my words? If you stay in front, there won't be any danger." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly raised his head and asked doubtfully, "Yuan Weiqing, since Yi Tianhua will attack me, then what's the point of having me stay at the front?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, "LV Hushan, don't underestimate yourself. How can it be meaningless for me to keep you at the front?" At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to reply and continued. "LV Hushan, the main reason I'm keeping you at the front is because I hope that when I attack Yi Tianhua, you can attack him from behind and restrain him. I believe that with you helping me from the side, Yi Tianhua will definitely be caught off guard. When that happens, won't the pressure on me be reduced by a lot? Maybe Yi Tianhua will let me go and then both of us will be safe. Don't you think so?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan thought about it in his heart and nodded. "Yuan Weiqing, if that's the case, then I can promise you that I'll stay at the front with you and help you at the crucial moment." At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to reply and continued. "Yuan Weiqing, I can stay at the front to help you, but you have to promise me that once we successfully capture Yi Tianhua, when it's time to split the spiritual medicine, we'll split it equally. What do you think?" Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. After thinking for a moment, he slowly said, "LV Hushan, that's impossible. My contribution is greater than yours. Even if you stay at the front, it's still the two of us blocking the front together, so our contribution is the same. However, when I ambushed Yi Tianhua just now, my contribution is greater than yours. So, if you want to split the spiritual medicine equally, I can't agree." At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to reply and continued. "Unless you stay at the front yourself." Chapter 755. Yuan Weiqing smiled and said, "LV Hushan, if you stay at the front, we can split all the elixirs equally. What do you think?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned. "Yuan Weiqing, how can you do that? If you stay at the front alone, you won't be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Are you saying that if I stay at the front alone, I will be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack?" Yuan Weiqing shook his head. "LV Hushan, you don't understand. Yi Tianhua hates me. If he sees me blocking the front, he will definitely not hold back and I will naturally be in danger. But you are different. You have no enmity with Yi Tianhua. I don't believe that Yi Tianhua will attack someone who has no enmity with him. LV Hushan, Yi Tianhua is not a ruthless person. So you can rest assured that his first attack will be a probing attack. It will not be strong. As long as you make good use of this, you will definitely be able to safely avoid Yi Tianhua's attack." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, this is absolutely not possible. If you want me to stay at the front, you must let the two of us stay at the front. If you don't agree, then you should stay at the front alone. I will hide at the back. What do you think?" Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, how can this be? Don't tell me you don't want those elixirs? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded. Of course I want them. But you should be very clear that relying on me alone, it is absolutely impossible to block Yi Tianhua's attack. So if you want to stay, we will stay together. Otherwise, you will stay alone. You choose. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned and lowered his head to think for a moment. Then he slowly said, LV Hushan, if you agree to stay at the front alone, then I can give you 60% of the elixirs. What do you think? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, no. Even if you give me 60% of the elixirs, I will never agree. Seeing that LV Hushan did not agree to his conditions, Yuan Weiqing clenched his teeth and said, LV Hushan, if you stay in the front, I can give you 70% of the elixirs. Is that okay? Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, I'll give you 70% of the spirit herbs. That's not a small amount. Do you know how many 70% spirit herbs there are? It's a lot, 40% more than me. Are you still not satisfied? Don't forget how big my contribution is. As long as you stand in front and block Yi Tianhua's attack, you can get 70% of the spiritual herbs. LV Hushan, you have to think carefully. You only have one chance. If you miss it, you won't have another chance. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He had already understood this point. Naturally, he would not fall for Yuan Weiqing's trick. So what if he could get 70% of the spiritual medicine? Could it be that with his own strength, he could block Yi Tianhua's attack? Impossible. Even LV Hushan was sure that he couldn't block Yi Tianhua's attack. If he was accidentally killed by Yi Tianhua, even if he got 100% of the elixirs, he wouldn't be able to get it. Therefore, even if LV Hushan really wanted those elixirs, he would never agree to stay in front alone and block Yi Tianhua's attack. Yuan Weiqing, that's impossible. Even if you give me 70% of the elixirs, I won't agree to stay in front alone and block Yi Tianhua's attack. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, Yi Tianhua's martial arts are very strong. The people in front, whether it's you or me, will definitely not be able to block his attack. Therefore, don't think too much. We can only rely on the combined strength of the two of us to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Don't you understand? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sighed in his heart. He knew that he couldn't fool LV Hushan anymore. However, even though he knew that he couldn't fool LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing still wanted to try. LV Hushan, if you agree to stay in front and block Yi Tianhua's attack alone, then I'll promise you that when it's time to split the elixirs, I'll give you 80% of the elixirs. Are you satisfied now? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's offer, LV Hushan was very tempted. He wanted to agree because if he succeeded, he would get 80% of the elixirs. With 80% of the elixirs, LV Hushan was sure that even if he cultivated with Yuan Weiqing at the same time, his cultivation speed would be much faster. If Yuan Weiqing needed 80 years to master his martial arts, then if he ate 80% of the elixirs, he might be able to master it in 40 years. Thinking of this, LV Hushan was really tempted because everything that was said just now was just everyone's guess. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were indeed very high, but don't forget that the secret thunder sect of the South region also had thunderbolt pills. In addition, Hall Master Xue knew the star technique. Perhaps Yi Tianhua would be injured by the thunderbolt pills before he could rush over. If things really developed like this, wouldn't it mean that 80% of the elixirs were almost the same as picking them up from the ground? As the protector of the secret thunder sect of the South region, LV Hushan naturally knew the power of the thunderbolt pills in his sect. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to catch one, let alone Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang. LV Hushan could guarantee that if Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang were to go all out, there would be dozens of thunderbolt pills thrown out at once. With so many thunderbolt pills forming an inescapable net in the air, even if Yi Tianhua's martial arts were strong, could he escape the inescapable net formed by the thunderbolt pills? Thinking of this, LV Hushan suddenly gained a lot of confidence because what he imagined just now might really happen. First of all, as long as the two sides fought, he would definitely be the first to attack. This was because he came prepared and would definitely catch Yi Tianhua off guard. As long as Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang were the first to throw out dozens of thunderbolt pills, forming an inescapable net. At that time would Yi Tianhua, who was currently in the inescapable net, have the ability to rush out? When he rushed out, he might already be seriously injured. How much martial arts would a seriously injured Yi Tianhua have left? Maybe, thinking of this, an image suddenly appeared in LV Hushan's mind. Yi Tianhua swayed as he rushed out of the smoke. At that time, would he still have a sword in his hand? Even his sword would have been blown away. How much martial arts would Yi Tianhua have left after he lost his sword? When Yi Tianhua, who was seriously injured and had lost his sword, rushed in front of him, his martial arts might not even be as good as Lin Fan's. At that time, wouldn't Lin Fan be able to capture him? LV Hushan was very clear that if he captured Yi Tianhua, when the time came to split the elixirs, Yuan Weiqing would be lucky if he could get 10% of the elixirs. Thinking that all the elixirs would belong to him, LV Hushan was really happy. Even so, he did not dare to agree. This was because he was very clear that what happened just now was just his imagination. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were strong. Even if he was seriously injured, he was definitely not someone Lin Fan could handle. If Yi Tianhua was seriously injured in the inescapable net and collapsed to the ground, Lin Fan would have gotten a huge advantage. But if Yi Tianhua was only slightly injured when he rushed out, he would definitely be furious. And Lin Fan, who was in front of him, would definitely not be able to escape. Thinking of this, LV Hushan could not help but shiver. He turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and smiled bitterly. Yuan Weiqing, I think it's better to forget about it. Even if you give me all the elixirs, once Yi Tianhua rushes over, I won't be able to stop him. LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He let out a sigh and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, I think it's better for the two of us to stay in front. This is safer. Once we are attacked by Yi Tianhua, the two of us can take care of each other and the danger will be reduced. Don't you think so? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing could not help but frown and asked tentatively, LV Hushan, are you saying that even if I give you 80% of the elixirs, you won't agree? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I already said that even if you give me 100% of the elixirs, I can't agree to it because I definitely won't be able to stop Yi Tianhua's attack by myself. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned and raised his broken arm. He smiled bitterly and said, LV Hushan, do you think that a one-armed person like me can be of any help to you? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for LV Hushan to reply, he continued to speak. LV Hushan, my arm is seriously injured and I only have 10 to 20% of my martial arts left. Even if I stay in front, do you think I'll be of any use? Who knows, not only will I not be of any use, but I'll also bring you trouble. Wouldn't that be terrible? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, that won't happen. Even if you only have 1 or 2 levels of martial arts left, it won't be a problem. Because even if you stay in front, you'll at least be able to hold Yi Tianhua back. So don't worry, you'll definitely be of help to me. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing smiled bitterly and sighed. LV Hushan, I think it's better to forget about it. I just attacked Tianhua. After he sees me, he'll definitely be angry and increase his attack power. When that happens, won't you be as unlucky as me? LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, don't say any more. Although you sneak attacked Tianhua, but from the conversation just now, all of us can see that he actually doesn't hate you. On the contrary, he even feels a little guilty towards you. Yuan Weiqing, if we use Tianhua's guilt to our advantage, maybe we won't be in any danger at all. Don't you think so? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. LV Hushan, how is that possible? Not to mention, I did attack Tianhua just now. Tianhua also said that he won't forgive me. Later on, I made a lot of excessive demands of him. So I'm sure that Tianhua definitely hates me. As long as he sees me, don't talk about guilt. I'm afraid that he'll take out his sword and kill me to vent his hatred. LV Hushan, believe me, even if I stay in front, I won't be of any help to you. I think it's better to follow what Vice Hall Master Zhang said just now. You stay in front to block Tianhua, and I'll stay behind to attack Tianhua. This is the safest way, don't you think so? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, what are you talking about? Just now, you were the one who stayed in front alone. You said no, so I agreed to help you. But look, even now, you want me to stay at the front alone. I don't think I'll help you. You stay at the front by yourself. I'll stay at the back. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, if you want to stay in front, you said it yourself. I didn't force you. Since you said you want to stay in front, and I didn't stop you, you should stay in front. I'll follow Vice Hall Master Zhang's words and stay behind to attack Tianhua. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head and sneered. Yuan Weiqing, don't forget that the main reason we want to capture Tianhua is because of you. If you don't want to stay at the front, then I think we should just give up on this plan. Yuan Weiqing, as long as we give up this plan, I'm afraid you won't even get a single gold coin. At that time, let's see what you'll do. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. After reacting, he sneered and said, LV Hushan, I admit that catching Tianhua will be beneficial to me. And don't forget that once we catch Tianhua, you also want to practice martial art. If that's the case, how can you say that this matter has nothing to do with you? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan couldn't help but frown. Yuan Weiqing, I'm different from you. Even if I don't practice martial arts, at least I'm not disabled. But you're different. If you don't practice martial arts, your life will be ruined. So, this battle between us is all for you. If you still hide in the back, then I don't think there's any need to continue this battle. Don't you think so? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing knew that he couldn't hide anymore. He could only sigh and slowly say, LV Hushan, to be honest, my martial arts have been greatly reduced. Even if I stay in front, there's no use. Moreover, Tianhua hates me very much. If I stay in front, I might even implicate you. Chapter 756. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. No, you'll only help me if you stay in the front. Why would you get me involved? At the same time, LV Hushan sneered in his heart because he also believed what Yuan Weiqing had just said. Yuan Weiqing had attacked Tianhua. Not only that, but he also refused to admit it. In the end, he even asked Tianhua for various conditions. Through Tianhua's behavior, Yuan Weiqing could see that he was a little annoyed. This was the result that LV Hushan wanted. As long as Yi Tianhua was annoyed with Yuan Weiqing, he would naturally hate him. At that time, his first target would naturally be Yuan Weiqing. As long as Yi Tianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, he would be safe. Although Yi Tianhua had killed Yuan Weiqing and would still attack him, LV Hushan had already thought of a countermeasure for this. In this battle, the first person to attack would definitely be him. LV Hushan believed that with the sudden attack of Vice Hall Leader Zhang and Hall Leader Shui, even if they couldn't catch Yi Tianhua, they could at least injure him. When Yi Tianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, Hall Leader Shui and Vice Hall Leader Zhang would launch the second round of attack. When the second round of attack came, Yi Tianhua might have been seriously injured. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to attack him. At that time, he would naturally be safe. Even if Yi Tianhua wasn't seriously injured in the second round of attack, LV Hushan wouldn't be worried. This was because when Yi Tianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, he would have already run far away. As for helping Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan didn't even think about it. Who was Yi Tianhua? LV Hushan was certain that if he dared to help when Yi Tianhua was attacking Yuan Weiqing, Yi Tianhua wouldn't even need to attack him head-on. He would only need to use a backhand strike to cripple him like Yuan Weiqing, but more likely, he would be killed by Yi Tianhua. Because of this, LV Hushan had already thought it through. Once Yi Tianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, what he had to do was not to attack, but to retreat. After Yuan Weiqing heard LV Hushan's words, he sighed. LV Hushan, if I block in front, Yi Tianhua might be the next one to attack. Therefore, when the time comes, you must help me restrain Yi Tianhua from behind. Do you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Of course. Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to worry. As long as Yi Tianhua attacks you, I will definitely attack Yi Tianhua from behind so that he won't have time to attack you. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to worry. This is just your guess. Maybe the first person Yi Tianhua attacks will be me? When the time comes, I also hope that you will attack Yi Tianhua from behind to share some of my pressure. Yuan Weiqing, please. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing sighed silently. He knew very well how dangerous this battle would be. When he ambushed Yi Tianhua just now, he had already seen Yi Tianhua's martial arts. Yuan Weiqing was sure that if Yi Tianhua attacked him, he wouldn't have any hope of blocking him. Most importantly, he had offended Yi Tianhua just now and made all sorts of requests. He might have already angered Yi Tianhua. When the battle started, Yi Tianhua's first target might be him because of hatred. However, at this point, Yuan Weiqing had no other choice. As long as he wanted to practice martial arts, he had to stand in front. This was his only chance. Of course, Yuan Weiqing could also choose not to practice martial arts, but he was unwilling to do so. If he didn't choose to practice martial arts, his life would really be wasted. Seeing that the two of them had made up their minds, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction and asked with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, have you guys decided to stand in front together? Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing nodded at the same time but didn't say anything. Zhang Chunren ignored their silence and turned to look at Shui Zhizheng. He said with a smile, Hall Master Shui, let Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan stay in front while the two of us stay behind and attack Yi Tianhua. What do you think? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhizheng nodded and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan are good. They know that Yi Tianhua's martial arts are strong, but they are not afraid. They are indeed very good. Speaking of this, Shui Zhizheng paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for anyone to answer him. For Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan, we all have to work hard. Only by capturing Yi Tianhua can our plan succeed. After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, Zhang Chunren nodded and said with a smile, "In that case, let's get ready." At this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for the others to answer his question and continued to speak. "LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, as long as the battle is over, I will go back and immediately build a secret room for you. I believe that in a few days you will be able to cultivate successfully. At that time, you can go to the secret room to cultivate." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing remembered that if he wanted to cultivate martial arts, he still needed to go to the secret room. Thinking of the secret room that Zhang Chunren mentioned, Yuan Weiqing's heart couldn't help but tremble. He suddenly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I think that after the battle is over, even if we cultivate martial arts, we don't need to go to the secret room to cultivate. As long as we stay at home and cultivate, the effect will be the same. We also don't need to waste money to build a secret room. Isn't this killing two birds with one stone?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren smiled and shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, what Hall Master Xue said just now makes sense. If you are allowed to practice martial arts at home, your cultivation speed will definitely drop by a lot. If you cultivate in the secret room, there will be no distractions in your mind. If you cultivate properly, your cultivation speed will increase exponentially. So, I think it's better to follow Hall Master Xue's words and cultivate in the secret room. You can rest assured that the secret room I build will be very sturdy. When your martial arts reach the level of the one-armed Saber King, when will you be able to break the secret room with your martial arts? I think, under the drive of this kind of motivation, you and LV Hushan's cultivation speed will definitely be very fast." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhizheng nodded. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you are right. Only by cultivating martial arts in the secret room can we achieve the upper level of martial art. Only then can we live up to our expectations. LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, you also have to work hard." Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked at LV Hushan. He frowned and said, "LV Hushan, are you willing to cultivate martial arts in the secret room?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I don't want to. If possible, even if it's a little slower, I'd rather cultivate at home. I don't want to cultivate in that secret room. It's too painful." After hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing quickly turned his head and looked at Zhang Chunren. He quickly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you also heard that LV Hushan also doesn't want to cultivate in the secret room. So, I think we should forget about the matter of building the secret room. Let us stay at home and cultivate. What do you think?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhizheng didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to speak and said first, "Yuan Weiqing, do you know how rare this opportunity to cultivate martial arts is? But you don't want to cultivate seriously. This is really disappointing. Yuan Weiqing, listen to me. Don't think about those things. As long as you cultivate in the secret room, it's better than anything else. Do you understand?" After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. "Hall Master Xue, if you want me to cultivate in the secret room, then I'd rather not cultivate." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhizheng was stunned for a moment, but his heart was suddenly overjoyed. Wasn't this the reason he had been talking for so long? As long as Yuan Weiqing didn't want to cultivate martial arts, then naturally there was no need to fight with Yi Tianhua. Yi Tianhua didn't want the two gangs to fight, and Xue Zhizheng didn't want to either. So, as long as the problem could be solved, he didn't want to cause more trouble. Moreover, for today's matter, Yi Tianhua had already agreed to compensate 5 million gold coins. In Xue Zhizheng's opinion, this should be enough. However, if Yuan Weiqing wanted to cultivate martial arts, then this amount of gold coins would naturally not be enough. So, He could only capture Tianhua and do as Zhang Chunren said and obtain more gold coins. But this was not the result Xue Zhizheng wanted. So, he thought of this method to make things difficult for Yuan Weiqing and make him retreat. As long as Yuan Weiqing decided not to cultivate martial arts, this matter would be perfectly resolved. No matter what happened in the future, at least it wouldn't cause a fight between the two gangs. Thinking of this, Xue Zhizheng raised his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with a smile, "Yuan Weiqing, could it be that you really don't want to cultivate martial arts?" After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, Yuan Weiqing let out a sigh. "Head Xue, I really can't enjoy the backroom that you've built. If I had to live in that 1 m wide backroom for dozens of years, I would rather not cultivate than suffer that torture." Xue Zhizheng's words made Yuan Weiqing sigh. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan also smiled bitterly and said, "Hall Master Xue, Yuan Weiqing is right. That kind of secret room can't be lived in. In order to cultivate martial arts, who would be able to endure suffering for a few decades? So, if you insist, then we can only withdraw." After hearing the two's words, Xue Zhizheng waved his hand and said with a cold smile, "Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, you want to be like the one-armed Saber King, but you don't want to suffer the pain that the one-armed Saber King went through. Do you think it's so easy to cultivate high-level martial arts?" At this point, Xue Zhizheng's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing to reply and continued. "Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, the two of you remember, if you want to cultivate high-level martial arts, then you have to suffer enough to succeed. If you want to cultivate, then I can support you with all my strength. But if you don't want to cultivate, then don't waste our resources. You also know that if you want to cultivate high-level martial arts, then you have to pay a high price. Since you don't want to cultivate, then I think we should just drop this matter. What do you think?" After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment, then he whispered, "Hall Master Xue, we just want to stay at home and cultivate. It's not that we don't want to cultivate." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhizheng shook his head and said with a sigh, "Yuan Weiqing, if you want to cultivate high-level martial arts, then you have to listen to my instructions." "Yuan Weiqing, I'm not trying to harm you. I know the one-armed Saber King, so I naturally know how he cultivated his martial arts. Therefore, I believe that if you want to stay at home and cultivate, it's absolutely impossible for you to cultivate to the upper level of martial art. So, if you want to cultivate martial arts, then you have to follow the one-armed Saber King's method to succeed. Do you understand?" After hearing Xue Zhizheng's words, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. "Hall Master Xue, I know you're doing this for our own good, but in that kind of secret room, no matter what, we can't stay there." Speaking up to here, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Xue Zhizheng to answer his words, and continued speaking. "Hall Master Xue, why don't you let us stay at home and cultivate? Even if our martial arts can't reach the one-armed Saber King's level, we won't regret it. What do you think?" After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, "Hall Master Xue, LV Hushan is right. Anyway, we don't want to reach the one-armed Saber King's level. Just let us stay at home and cultivate. As for what level we can cultivate to, we'll accept it. Hall Master Xue, just give us this chance." After hearing the two's words, Xue Zhizheng smiled and nodded. "LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, since you don't have the confidence to reach the one-armed Saber King's level of martial arts, and want to stay at home and cultivate instead of cultivating in the secret room, that's fine, I can agree." Speaking up to here, Xue Zhizheng's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan to answer his words, and continued speaking. "However, since you don't care about the level of your martial arts, I think we have to change our plan. Spending a lot of money to buy elixirs, spending a lot of effort to obtain secret martial arts manuals, and medicinal herbs that can change one's martial arts talent, none of these are needed. Anyway, you don't care about the level of your martial arts. What's the use of us spending so much money? So, I've decided that today's matter will end here. After you go back to your own home and cultivate your martial arts. As for what level you can cultivate to, that's your own business. I won't interfere. LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, what do you think of this idea? After hearing Shui Zhizheng's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment and asked with some doubt, Hall Master Shui, if we go home and cultivate, does that mean that the elixirs, secret martial arts manuals, and medicinal herbs that can change one's martial arts talent will all be gone? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.